I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 5:30 p.m. This board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, to discuss or hear complaints against personnel, and the time is 5:30. The board will now convene an open session, and the time is 5:43 p.m. Welcome everybody to the meeting, and especially to our colleague, Miss Tracy Shelton, whose birthday it is today.
Happy birthday.
I don't know if you wanted me to say that or not, but you got it anyway. So. All right, item number 4, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments. Pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments. Do I have a motion to approve item A as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. Do I have a second?
No, that wasn't me.
That wasn't you. It was Ms. Landry. Thank you, Ms. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item 5, board business. Consider and take possible action on HB 121 renewal of good cause exception resolution. Dr. Micah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to invite Dan Lyon to the podium to present this item to y'all.
All right. Good evening, President Bauer, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. I am here today to respectfully request a good cause exception regarding the campus safety specialist role mandated by HB 3. HB 3 mandates having an armed peace officer or SRO on every campus during the school day. The district is unable to find a personnel who qualify and to serve as a security officer. I am here to request a good cause exception to utilize our campus safety specialist. The campus safety specialists have proven to be an invaluable asset to our elementary schools administrations by relieving principals of various responsibilities. They enable school leaders to focus more effectively on supporting teachers, students, and parents while maintaining the assurance that the campus is safe and secure. Since my arrival, I've received numerous commendations from administrators praising the contributions of their assigned safety specialist. In several cases, principals have specifically requested to retain their CSS when transitioning to the new campuses, highlighting the value that they place on this role. The protective presence and proactive approach of our CSS staff contribute significantly to the preserving the safety and integrity of our campuses. Moreover, their positive relationships with students have had a meaningful impact, recognized and appreciated by both parents and teachers. The continued day-to-day engagement of the campus safety specialists, both in supporting staff and building rapport with the students, is key to the program's success and continued value to the district. I am recommending to the board approve the attached resolution as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons.
Yes,
all of you were provided the resolution for review. Do I have any questions or comments from any board members? Ms. Shelton?
Has the resolution changed from the last time it was submitted and passed, or is it exactly the same as what we've done before?
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Lopez, I don't think we had to have a resolution before, if I recall. It was
There was a resolution that was passed when the original requirement came into being and the board claimed the good cause exception. This is actually an updated version of the resolution, Ms. Shelton, that updates it in accordance with House Bill 121.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. If you'll remember, I was in D.C. when that original item was passed.
Any other questions? All right, if none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Chigi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Ms. Landry again? Oh, Ms. Shelton. I'll get it right one of these days. Thank you, Ms. Shelton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item 6, new business for possible action. A, board policy. 1, possible action regarding board policy update DC local. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Byer, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Shiloh Wooden, our executive director for human resources, will address this item.
Good evening. Tonight we present for your consideration and approval revisions to board policy DC local. Currently, the board has the sole authority to approve administrative appointments for certain contract personnel, specifically director level and above for central office positions, and principals and assistant principals. What we present this evening is changes to the language that would actually seek to grant authority to the superintendent for positions that are actually director and below and assistant principals. The reason for this request is that throughout the summer, when we have our heaviest hiring season, we have administrative appointments that we are seeking, and that would allow us, without coming to you for a special board meeting, to make those recommendations. Also, every district has a penalty-free resignation deadline that does limit people sometimes from outside the district in applying for those jobs if we're posting them outside of that time frame. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Again, everybody was provided this revision in your packet. Do I have any questions? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve board policy DC local as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, possible action regarding board policy EFB local. Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, executive staff, and guests. I would like to ask Christina Arena, Director of Library Services, to come forward for this agenda item. And as she's coming forward, you guys were given a policy update. There was some minor changes in the language to one of the pieces, and she will share where that change is located at as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. Good evening, board members. I'm going to give Leanne a little bit of time to bring up the presentation. There we go. Awesome. So tonight's presentation will review the proposed changes to local policy as outlined in the document included in your packet that you received earlier this week in response to Senate Bill 13. This legislation sets new state requirements for the selection, review, and approval of library materials. Leanne has brought up the policy with proposed revisions, but I do want to point out one specific change that we made under the responsibility section. We added the very last sentence that states the DLAC shall assist the district in developing the list of library material recommendations to be presented to the board. We wanted to make clear that the DLAC is not curating the list of materials to order. They're simply reviewing the titles and then making that recommendation to the board whether those titles should be approved. Before we walk through the details, I want to take a moment to recognize the strong foundation that already exists in NEISD. Our district has long prioritized library policies that are thoughtful, transparent, and student-focused. In fact, many of the expectations outlined in SB 13 are already embedded in our current practices. Because of that, we're in a strong position to move forward with the necessary updates while maintaining the high standards we've set for our libraries. As Director of Library Services, my focus remains on ensuring our librarians have the tools and support they need to serve students well, that our collections continue to support meaningful learning, and that we remain fully aligned with both district expectations and state law. This presentation outlines both existing practices and proposed updates to policy. Items shown in blue reflect what is already in place. Items shown in green indicate proposed changes that respond directly to SB 13 requirements. Items with both colors include both current policy and proposed changes. I'll walk you through each section and highlight what's new, what's continuing, and how we plan to implement these changes with as little disruption as possible to library services and student access. We'll begin with an overview of NEISD's approach to collection development. NEISD's collection development policy follows state law and is built to support our district curriculum that focuses on selecting materials that are accurate, engaging, and encourage critical thinking. Our librarians make thoughtful choices, selecting resources that are age appropriate, aligned to grade level standards, and reflect a wide range of perspectives. Protection from inappropriate material. NEISD's collection development policy is in alignment with state and federal laws that strictly prohibit materials that are harmful, sexually explicit, obscene, or contain indecent or profane content. Library Services has established systems to ensure all library materials are appropriate for students. Maintaining the library collection is essential to keeping it useful and relevant. Librarians regularly conduct inventories and weed materials that are outdated, no longer used, or no longer support the curriculum. This ongoing process ensures that the collection stays accurate, up to date, and aligned with instructional needs. It also makes space for new titles and helps librarians focus their resources on materials that students and teachers are actively using. In March of 2022, NEISD launched the Transparency in Libraries page to give families a clear view of our library program and support a strong partnership with parents and guardians. We recognize that parents determine what is appropriate for their student, and our goal is to provide the tools and information they need to help create the best educational experience for their student. We regularly update this page and with current information on NEISD library collections and processes. SB 13 reinforces parents' roles as the primary decision makers when it comes to their child's access to library materials. The law requires districts to provide clear, easy access to the library catalog, including a list of available titles and a student's checkout history. Parents must also have the option to limit their child's access to specific books. Our library circulation system, Insignia, will now include a feature that supports this requirement and gives parents that level of control. SB 13 requires that all library materials, whether purchased or donated, be approved by the board in an open meeting. A list of proposed titles must be shared with the public for at least 30 days before approval. During that time, the community will have the opportunity to review the list and provide feedback. Under SB 13, a district can choose to establish a district library advisory committee, or DLAC, and must do so if requested by either 50 parents or 10% of the student body's parents, whichever is less. This committee would review requests for new or donated library materials and make recommendations to the school board. We are recommending the creation of this committee as a proactive step that reflects our commitment to transparency, collaboration, and the importance of parent input. Establishing a DLAC gives families a direct voice in the review process and helps us stay ahead of SB 13 requirements. Members will receive training in NEISD's collection development policy and will work to ensure that all materials align with district guidelines and reflect a variety of viewpoints. Our recommendation for the DLAC would be 2 members per SMD. The current reconsideration process allows any employee, parent, or district resident to request a review of library materials. The completed form is submitted to the campus principal, who works with the Campus Library Advisory Committee, or CLAC, to review the material and decide whether it should remain in the library or be removed. The CLAC is comprised of a member of the campus administration, the campus librarian, 2 faculty members, and 2 parents of enrolled students at that campus. If the CLAC decision is appealed, the proposed District Reconsideration Committee, or DRC, would review the material and the CLAC decision to determine whether to uphold or overturn it. This separation ensures a fresh, objective review at the district level. This committee, previously in place under the name District Library Advisory Committee, or DLAC, would be comprised of central office and campus professional staff and parents or guardians of current students in the district. If the DRC decision is appealed, the proposed DLAC would review the material and the previous decisions, then make a recommendation to the board. The board would then review all 3 prior decisions, the CLAC, the DRC, and DLAC, and make the final decision on the reconsideration request. Our recommendation for SB 13 implementation is to adopt EFB local as presented, establish a district library advisory committee or DLAC with 2 members per SMD, and then also to review book recommendations at least 2 times per year. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you very much for the information. Remind me, the DRC is composed of which components? Staff and parents?
So the DRC is made up of central office and campus professional staff. So it would include the executive director over library services, director of library services, other personnel from the library services department, campus teachers from that level requesting that reconsideration, and then parents from that same level or of enrolled students.
Okay. And then the CLAC, the campus level, it's similar makeup other than it just doesn't have district
at the
employees.
campus level that's requesting the reconsideration.
And so right now for reconsideration, it goes basically from the local level to, or from the librarian basically, right, to
Correct.
the CLAC, then to the DRC, and then it would come to the board at some point.
Correct. So currently we have
so
a
we're
CLAC.
we're proposing to put an extra step
Yes.
to add another layer of review. Now, also, once those books, well, that's a reconsideration, but then for new purchases and donations, those have to be posted for 30 days regardless, right? So everybody has an opportunity to look at them.
Yes.
Everybody in the district can go and review the list and review the book.
Yes.
And so what would the purpose of the new committee, the DLAC, be in that situation?
In the approval process
In
of
the
new
approval
titles?
process, yeah.
So they would review, library services would compile a list of requests for purchase of titles,
Right.
both for libraries and classroom libraries. And then that list would be vetted by me as Director of Library Services, and then that list would be submitted to the DLAC, the board, and then posted online for those 30 days. The DLAC would have those 30 days as well to review those titles, review community feedback, and then make a recommendation to the board on whether that list should be approved or which titles on that list should be approved or disapproved.
And we're proposing they meet twice a year?
Twice a year.
Okay.
As this is our trial year. So
Well,
yeah.
and saying, and we don't necessarily know at this point, but what would be the impacts to a timeline for you as a district ordering books?
It's very different to how we
Sure.
do business. We typically let librarians order books year round. And so the way the law is written, librarians can order books year round if they are duplicate ISBN numbers, meaning they already exist in our catalog. So those can continue year round. Anything that's a new ISBN to the catalog does not exist in our current catalog, has to be submitted for approval. So those would be gathered twice a year to compile this master list that would then be presented to the DLAC.
And what is the volume of books we're talking about twice a year? Approximately.
We process 22,000 books a year. Of course, those are duplicates, right? So
Correct.
we're estimating anywhere between 4,000 and 5,000 for the first round, only because librarians will be ordering new releases, stuff that was released in the spring, in the summer, stuff they don't already have in their current catalog. So we anticipate that first list to be large. The second list, probably not as large because a lot of those orders or books were approved the first time around.
How many reconsiderations have we had in the last year?
We've had one in the last
How
2
many
years.
in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
One in the last 5, I believe, is what we submitted.
Okay.
And that was not necessarily a reconsideration to be removed. It was to move the level from elementary to middle.
Got it.
So
Okay. Questions, comments?
I do.
Ms. Cox, then Ms. Villarreal.
Hi. Just first of all, I want to say thank you very much for the presentation, and I want to say thank you to our district for already being proactive in this matter. I do have some big concerns about this. My biggest concern is I know some districts have said it has set the process back by 15 or 16 months. So that means a whole year without a new book for some kid to go in and check out, be excited to go check out in the library. So that kind of concerns me, because I remember from my childhood, I was always really super excited about what new books are going to be there. So that disrupts, but that also lends to, in my opinion, to a disruption of education. And then I don't know how this looks for classroom libraries. I don't know what that looks like as well. So that's my other concern. But that's my two things, is the disruption of education, which I really think, because we went from one process, and now we have 4 processes to get through. And then to try to align those 2 meetings up and then get it on an agenda at the school board meeting, it may be a year before you guys are allowed to do your job and order the materials that, as professionals, that you need within your scope of your job. So that and just the timeline, I think, is the 2 biggest concerns that I have. Thank you.
Ms. Villarreal.
You know, sadly, we're here because districts refuse to take action when they had the opportunity. So now we have a law. Oh, yay. My concern is this. Are we still included in an online library situation where kids can check out books online? How does this affect that? Because, you know, frankly, if parents don't want their kids reading smut, essentially, how do we keep them from reading that online?
So we currently have Overdrive, which is our e-content platform. They are not currently in compliance with SB 13, so we have paused student access to that until they get in compliance with SB 13. So that is, for now, tabled, because they don't have, you know, until they can provide checkout history, opt-out options for parents. There's no way that we can give students access to that at this time. Their timeline for now is early fall, so we will keep parents updated and the community updated on those changes or implementation.
As we refuse to allow certain books into our library system, would they be able to handle taking that out of their catalog that they send to us, or do they just send that out all over the state of Texas or wherever they send it? Would they be able to make something for us specifically?
So you mean the e-content that we
right,
purchase?
the e-content that would be allowed, or, you know, would they just have to go through and modify their catalog that would come to the NEISD? Is that something that they can do? Have we been in contact with them to find out if this is something that they can do?
So we purchase our own ebooks. We have that choice. We purchase ebooks the same way that we purchase library books. So we vet whatever goes into our Sora, which is our platform for school-aged children. So we control what the students see. It's not one huge collection that all of Texas or all of, you know, San Antonio has access to. It's specific to NEISD. So we have removed any books that are not in compliance with HB 900, anything that's not age appropriate, because those books are leveled elementary, middle, and high. So if a student, for example, is an elementary student, they only have access to those books that are marked elementary level. They don't have access to the entire catalog for our district.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Ms. Gigi?
So first, I want to thank you for your coming in new, and first line of duty is to take care of this. So the books that are already on the shelves, they are not part of this.
No, they're grandfathered in.
Okay. And I just want to say I agree with Ms. Cox. The process is so slowed down. I remember as a principal, parents would come in and buy, or grandparents, a birthday book for their child and, you know, donate it to the library, and now it doesn't go on the shelf for however long. Also, teachers change, and we write new units, or we're looking at a unit from a different aspect, and we want this new book. Can't have it. So I feel like, once again, the state is taking decision making. Parents, I want parents to have the decision making. They can opt out of the book, but the librarians in our district, I believe, are very trustworthy and have done a good job vetting our books. So I just want to say that for the record. I understand the state has passed this and we need to comply, and I I think it's a good idea to get out ahead of it, so I appreciate your work on it. But I guess all I can say is I commend the librarians, and I trust the librarians, and I also don't like the speed at which this happens. I also wonder about the fiscal year, and I assume you're going to do one in the fall and one in the spring, and the one in the spring I hope will be so that they can get, I mean, by the spring the year's almost over, but there's a deadline when they can't spend any more money, and I know you'll have to take those things into account. I'm sure you will.
So we're increasing ordering limits for librarians so that they can spend their entire budget within the fiscal year. So our dates are in alignment with that.
Okay.
The proposed dates.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Villarreal?
I have just one more question, because I'm trying to think how this process can, be, speeded up, I guess, or sped up. Is there going to be anything that's going to help us out where the publisher has to put a rating on the book? Is there anything on the table about that?
So SB 13 only requires us to, based on ISBN, so they're not looking at any other criteria for that, so that would not help or speed up that process. What we are hoping is that by next school year, when we have all of these systems in place, we can add more approval dates to the calendar, so that, it'll speed up the ordering and the access of books to students.
Well, I'm just wondering if, because I know this is not your, bailiwick or anything, but hopefully putting this out there, because ultimately the people who publish these books and then put a grade level on them should be responsible for putting, you go to a movie and it's, PG-13 or it's rated G or, whatever. So it seems to me, since we're now in a situation where we could actually get into legal trouble over this, that there should be some kind of a grading system, on these books, which would help the process. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Ms. Villarreal, in House Bill 900, it actually, I think it was that bill, right, Mr. Jarrett? House Bill 900 actually was requiring that, and the court struck it down and said that they could not. So we're back to doing it through our librarians.
And publishers do put recommended audience levels, so that helps us a lot. So that speeds up the process for me as I'm vetting lists that come in from librarians.
But correct me if I'm wrong, they're not standardized.
Correct.
That's the challenge. So
change, yes.
from one publisher to the other, what they deem ratings and such can be different, which is why library services and the DLAC and all of these committees are so important to help make certain that they belong there.
The donated books follow the same path, right?
Yes.
For review, posted for 30 days, all that. What does that mean for the little libraries that are at the front of some of our campuses?
So our recommendation now, and we've told our librarians this when we met with them on Tuesday, is that we would bring those, because most of those libraries are posted either in the main lobby or outside of the school entrance. So if they're movable, we are recommending that they bring them into their library so there's more control of what's going into those free little libraries, and they can vet those books for the appropriate age level, audience level, et cetera. So that's our recommendation as of now. If they're not able to be moved, we will have to put a notice that says any donations, thank you for your donations. These donations need to be turned into the main office for vetting by our campus librarian. So that's our recommendation at this time.
Okay. So if it's on our property,
correct,
we're responsible for it.
Yes. Yeah, and it's hard to manage that because people can drop off books at any time during the day,
Sure.
off school hours, all of that.
Okay. Ms. Landry?
I just want to say thank you for being proactive on the recommendation for the development of the committee, and also for putting all this together. Do we know what changes have been made, if any, to the legal policy that accompanies this policy? or does anybody know?
I don't think we haven't, I'll let Mr. Jarrett answer that question.
Yeah, at this time, nothing's been released. All of this is coming pretty quickly. We're just really interpreting and working with our attorney on what seems to be most aligned with what the expectation of the state is. So eventually legal will be published, and we believe that this local policy will align.
Awesome, thank you. And Mr. Byer, we know when we'll have the item to create this committee on the agenda?
Since this all came up pretty quickly, a little quicker than I had anticipated, we thought we were going to have a little more time, but since it has to be in place before the first day of the school year, we'll have to bring that back to actually create that committee if that is passed. It will unfortunately not be this coming Monday, but we do have another special meeting in August that we can look and try to add that to. That's a piece that did not get added to this. So if this were to go forward, yeah, we would all have to go back into our bag of volunteers and find a couple more people to help on the committee.
All right, and thank you again.
What, may I add something, Mr. Byer? One of the things as when we looked at this policy, we kind of looked at the shack policy and how one of the things that we can offer to you all is should you want that, we can push out through social media and through some avenues, hey, we're forming a DLAC. If you're interested, please submit. You can have an application form just like what you do for shack, and then they would come to you through your SMDs, and then you all would, either look at them if you can't find somebody or, vet through them the way that you currently do it. So there's always that option as well.
I also want to add that when we get applications or give applications for the CLAC, there is an option at the bottom to check that says that they would like to be considered for the DLAC. So that's another way to get a pool of applicants.
Ms. Shelton.
As a reader, this offends me. And it offends me because it's censorship, in my opinion. One of the things I'm proudest of with this district is that we follow the law. And so we will follow the law. When we censor things, though, people tend to want to read them if they had no interest in them at all. Because I did not read 1984 until it was put on the banned books list. Pretty good, actually. The amount of time that it will now take to get a new book into the library is unacceptable. Is there a way to reduce either the DRC or the COC or one of the other committees that's looking at books so that we can move along faster?
So you're asking to remove the DLAC, like that option, and
Well,
just straight to the board? Or the list would go straight to the board,
Yeah,
and then only the board?
Ms. Shelton, so those multiple committees are only for when there's a challenge to a book.
Okay.
Okay? The DLAC's job, so correct me if I'm wrong, okay, is librarians are going to submit titles that they want to purchase. She's going to take a look at them and compile a list. That list then goes to the DLAC. They make the recommendation to you all then to purchase. All right? But it has to follow the 30-day posting for our community, for everybody to be able to look at. And then the DLAC reviews, and that becomes the process. So only those other multiple committees only happen should there be a challenge of a book. And I believe, as you just said, we've had one in the last
5 years.
5 years. So that more laborious process will only happen should there be a book out there that somebody says, I don't like that. And they challenge it because it's on our shelves.
Understood. Thank you. Are we going to talk about this policy next, or are we going to?
We're talking about it right now.
Okay. So to that end, Dr. Micah, I don't remember what where it is in here, but the idea that we would then remove that book from consideration for the entire time of the process is also censorship, because I kind of like 1884 now, right? And I want my kid to read it. And so now you've taken away my parental rights for my child to be able to read something that I think is very important. And so I'll find this line, I'll go back my line by line, but that's something I'd want to strike from the policy.
That's actually written in SB 13. It was a change to our policy. Yeah. So it specifically states that the book has to be removed during the reconsideration process.
So let me ask you, does it have to be removed from our entire system or just from the library where the person was offended by it?
I believe it's the entire system. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would agree with Ms. Shelton, though, on the reconsideration request, that I think adding one more layer to that process is just bogging things down and time consuming. And it's if they get to that point, they're going to come to us anyway if it's appealed. And so I would suggest that in the section on page 8 of the policy, that in the second paragraph, or I guess first full paragraph, that says, an individual who submitted a request for reconsideration may appeal the decision of the decision of the District Reconsideration Committee to the District Library Advisory Committee. I would just strike that and say they're just going to come to the board at that point. And so what I would recommend is that paragraph say, an individual who submitted a request for reconsideration may appeal the decision of the District Reconsideration Committee, DRC, to the Board of Trustees in accordance with appropriate complaint policies, C, DGBA, FNG, GF. And then where it says, midway through that paragraph, it says all members of the DLAC, all the way through to the end of that section, just strike all of that. And then the next section that says, the board shall consider and take action on any appeal at this level under the applicable complaint process at the first open meeting held after the date the appeal is filed, and leave that, because we've already got 3 levels of reconsideration, and we'd add another level of reconsideration, and then it would come to the board. And I think in the reconsideration process that it should just come to us at that point. I don't know that we already have community members involved all the way through that process. And so then to convene another 14 plus people for one reconsideration, I think at that point it just needs to come to us as a thing. So I don't know if anybody else would support that, but
I would agree. I think that adds also gives the person who's submitting the challenge visibility and timeliness on their concern.
Correct. Yeah, I think so. And in the policy, it looks like we've either by law or by choice have cut the time frames from 10 days to 5 days, and some areas like that. So we're already cutting the time frame down, and I think that we just owe them that. If they're going to go through that process, it might as well just come to us. I think I personally, with the vetting of the titles and everything, I'm hesitant with just automatically. We have the flexibility to create the DLAC. It's not mandated, and so I think we still, in the policy as written, have the ability. It says we may create it. I think we can leave that, but again, these titles are posted for 30 days. Those comments in those 30 days, I assume, are going to come to us, and so. At this point, if we have a process in place that we rely on our professionals and we rely on the folks that vet these, we ultimately have to approve it anyway. It's coming to us regardless if it goes through 5 different phases, 5 different stages, or anything like that. So I'm fine leaving it in, but I don't know that I am supportive of creating one at this point. That's my own personal opinion. And I for sure want to strike it from the reconsideration process, because I don't think that adds any value to the folks that might be looking to challenge a book.
Mr. Byer, I agree with you. Would you support, though, and it may be the law and I've missed it, but that those book titles should be online for the 30 days, which allows for transparency. I think in your original slide deck, that spoke to transparency. And I think the people that are going to speak up will be looking at those books. So I think we should keep them online.
And they have to be.
Okay.
They have to be
Okay.
posted for 30 days once that list is published.
Right. Can I speak to page 7? The first full paragraph, second paragraph, it says within 5 days, changed from 10 to 5. Can we change that to business days? What I don't want is for it, you get it on Friday and people think that you guys have to turn it around over the weekend, right? So that would be Tuesday?
And I think, sorry to cut you off, but I believe, do we have language that qualifies a day as a business day, or do we have to specify that within each policy? I thought a day was.
Is it? Okay.
Is considered a school day or a business day. Because I know this discussion has come up in the past, and I just don't recall.
You need to specify it in
Okay.
the policy.
Okay.
Because each policy where there's a desire to define it as a business day, it says so. So for example, the grievance policies, it will say business day.
Got it.
So, yeah, you'd have to do that. The other thing is, just so that everyone knows, on the reconsideration process, if you create the DLAC, the district-wide council, then it has to be part of the reconsideration process. Just want to put that out there for everybody to understand.
But can we define what their role is in the reconsideration process?
Their role would be to review and to provide recommendations and feedback to you, but if the DLAC is created, then it needs to be part of the reconsideration process.
Okay.
Okay, so run me through the process now, that if we take that part out from start to finish.
For reconsideration?
Yeah, if they challenge, then it goes to the CLAC.
Correct. Then the DRC.
And then the DRC.
Then it would go, if we create a DLAC, it would go to the district library committee, then to us.
Then to us.
Correct.
And we need to add business to that.
And we need to, it sounds like,
Is that part of the
regardless
motion,
of what the other
Yeah.
changes might be, it sounds like we need to clarify business on all anywhere it says days.
If it's going to have to go to all 4 of those committees, can it not go to them concurrently? So they're all looking at it at one time, which would then speed up the process.
It's currently listed as an appeals process. So
okay.
you start at your library, go to your campus, go to the district.
Did you want to?
At least that's how I interpret it.
Yeah, and so we have 2 different things that we're trying to address. We got reconsideration, and then we have purchases, okay? So the DLAC, of course, what we're talking about right now is truly focused on purchasing of books and trying to expedite a process, but still follow the law. So those books will be placed 30 days. There's no other committees for that. The reconsideration, the CLAC, is really to maintain, the first level is the librarian, because that's between the parent and librarian, and there's a conversation that happens between the two to try to gain understanding. But if they don't come to an understanding, that CLAC still maintains that book within that community and that school to talk about why we think this book is not appropriate. We want to create an appeal process because people still may not agree. That's when it goes to the district level. The DLAC is really the purchasing power that's basically taking all that information and saying, we hear everything we say, we agree with the recommendation of the reconsideration, and that's what will come to the board, meaning that they took the time to look at it to expedite your decision-making process. So that's really what we're talking about there. And to Mr. Lopez's point, if we have a DLAC, then they have to be included in the reconsideration process. If we make a decision as a board that we don't have a DLAC, and tomorrow we have 50 parents come forward, then we will have to come back here and form the DLAC. What we're trying to say is we don't have to stop what we're doing because it's a shift in sand of action on the outside. So that's why we're trying to be proactive, because we don't know what tomorrow makes. and we don't know the window, how long it takes before it's considered 50 people or 10%. It can be, is that in a year? Is that in 5 years? Or is that, so we don't know all of that information. So we're just trying to be proactive so that way we can put a schedule together to purchase the books.
And Mr. Jarrett, and so correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Because you all want to kind of expedite, I think, that reconsideration committee. By law, do we have to have the district reconsideration committee? Because you could have the campus and it could go then skip that district level and go straight to the DLAC, correct?
It really could. The only challenge there is that by having a district reconsideration committee, it allows other professionals to understand how to do the research on reviews and different things like that. So that way it's truly taking a more informed look into it versus just an opinion without professional reviews.
Right. But so my point, though, is if the ladies and gentlemen on the board wanted to expedite it, that could be cut. It would start at the campus, it could come to the DLAC, and then straight to them. Correct? Because I don't believe the law. Correct. We can remove a process in it.
But there's nothing that says we couldn't move the people from professionals from the DRC to the DLAC and combine those two.
They would be non-voting members is the way that I believe the law is written.
Sure,
so
but
they
you
could
can
be
provide,
part of the discussion and the clarification.
you can provide guidance
right
to those folks so that we would still have that information in the room with the folks that either from the community or what it is, whatever it is. I think Ms. Shelton had a comment that Ms. Cox will get to you.
And Mr. Jarrett, help me, because it's like a grievance process, and I'm talking about reconsideration, which is why we start at the school and go step. But if it's going to end up here anyway, why wouldn't we do them concurrently? Why wouldn't we, when you're talking to the librarian, because I just don't agree, right? I'm the parent, I just don't agree, and I'm gonna stick with 1984, that's the book I just read. I don't want 1984 in the library. And we've had the conversation, she's told me while it's appropriate for a 12th grader, and I still don't agree. Now no one can read 1984, and now we've gotta wait for the next level. Why can't we, when there's a grievance, just give it to everybody? And, because it's gonna end up here, so we've got 90 days in the process, right? By the time everybody has a conversation and we have a board meeting.
Okay, I can answer. So there's nothing that prevents that. But part of the process is creating a tiered approach, because you always want to try to handle any type of grieving process at the lowest level, because many times it's a misunderstanding, or it's simply put, I don't agree with this book should be at an elementary, and the librarian may say, oh, you're right, I agree with you, and then it's done right there. And so it just eliminates the extra work that people don't have to do if we can handle it at the lowest level. Because the whole thing of what we've been trying to do is really create a partnership between our school and our parents anyway. And so really we want to maintain that level of conversation between the two parties.
My question's for Mr. Jarrett. You said that the DLAC is the purchasing power. Has the purchasing power, or would have the purchasing power?
Recommendation for you to approve the purchasing.
Sure. So, okay, fair, sir. I stand corrected. So who has that purchasing power now?
Right now, we've been able to do it through our library services. With the new bill, you guys are the ones that have to approve before we can make a purchase for our library services. So really, we still would follow our vetting process. So by the time it get to you, we would follow all the vetting. So you would basically have a list of books. Let's just say it's 5,000 books come to you. You'll see all 5,000 books. If there was any concerns that came out of DLAC or committee or the community, we would do a book resume for every single book that was identified by the community or DLAC of concern. That book resume will tell you exactly if what grade level is for, the concerns, the review levels, and everything. So you may not have to review 5,000 books, but you will have a detailed report on the 5 or 10 that are of concern. And then you would say, yeah, I see the concern, but I still agree that this book should be on the shelf, or I see the concern and I agree with this patron and this book should not be on the shelf. And once you make that recommendation, the book that you don't want on the shelf won't get purchased, but everything else would. That
Okay,
makes sense?
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Sorry,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Page 4, transparency and libraries internet webpage. Do we have that currently?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
been in place since 2022.
And anyone can access it?
Yes. Leanne, can you click on the link so that it can come up, and on that, there we go. So it's, like Mr. Jarrett mentioned, building that partnership with parents in the community, a way for parents to view what's in current NEISD library catalogs, as well as instructions on how to opt their student out of specific titles or categories of books. And then it also goes over kind of how we maintain our collection,
do.
as well as the reconsideration process.
Okay, I thought we did, but I saw it was in green, and so that threw me off just a second.
I have one more question. Can we go over, did we make any changes? Can we go back over our edits that we made to the local, if any?
What do you mean?
Well, just with, yeah, the conversation, just the, what,
So far, there's not been any edits or motions made with any edits. I made a suggestion, but then Mr. Lopez confirmed that we would have to, we would not be able to remove the DLAC from the reconsideration process.
okay.
If we are to convene a DLAC.
So Ms. Shelton's change to business days would be.
Oh, business days, we would have to, yes, sorry. That one we do have to add.
Sorry, really quick on that one. If you look at page 6, it says for the purposes of this policy, days shall mean district business days unless otherwise noted.
Perfect.
Where is that, Mr. Jarrett? I'm sorry.
Page 6, bottom.
Thank you. There it is, yep.
Okay.
So,
Page
there.
8, it says all members of the, and I'm on the first full paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth line, all members of the district library advisory council shall review the challenged library material, etc. I'd like to change that word from shall, and let me tell you why. Shall implies that they have to and they must. So if we've got 14 people and one of my people didn't review it, what does that mean? Can they not bring something forward? So I would like to change that to may, or we'll have an opportunity, whatever verbiage we think is more appropriate.
That might also be a,
Is that illegal,
Legal
Mr.
thing.
Lopez? It has to say shall? So are we setting ourselves up if somebody does not review?
No.
So, I'll let Rick. He probably knows more than I do, so I'm gonna let him talk.
Well, if the members of the DLAC will have to review the material, that's what they're charged with as members of that committee. Now, I mean, as far as whether or not or how in-depth that person may read it, I mean, that's going to be up to that individual person. But as far as we're concerned, the expectation is that if they are involved in a challenge, as they are required to be, if that committee is formed, then they are going to need to review the material in depth. That's the expectation.
Is this language the law, the way you have it written right now?
Yes, it comes
This
from
is
Senate Bill
exactly
13.
from the, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, we tried to track as much as we could within the existence of the policy.
Ms. Thompson?
I feel like in other times when we make policy, the legal supersedes our local, and right now we're currently meeting what is legal, and this is just, again, adding to the time frame, adding to the process when what we're doing is working currently. So That's just kind of my
Yeah.
2 cents.
Except Senate Bill 13 makes us make the changes.
But only if it's
So the legal, look, TASB just hasn't pushed out a legal. That's not uncommon, especially after this legislative session. There were so many changes to the law. So we may not see the actual legal document for another several months. But what we know is before the first day of school, this policy has to be in place. Before the first day of school. Correct, Mr. Lopez? Before the first day of school. So we need a policy in place that, from our legal counsel advising us, and then through library services and some folks, we've written a policy that we believe meets the letter of the law as far as the legal requirement is for Senate Bill 13. When TASB eventually gives us a policy, should we have to make any changes based off of their legal interpretation, then we'll bring it back to you all and do just like this and have you reconsider that policy. But this policy has to be in place before day one.
What I hear you saying, Dr. Micah, is we have to vote yes?
What I'm saying is you need a policy that abides by Senate Bill 13 before Monday. You do.
But only if, it just doesn't make sense. Why would we adopt a policy when we don't know if we need to adopt the policy?
No, Senate Bill 13 says you must adopt the policy.
Right, a policy, but not this policy.
Mr. Lopez?
Sorry,
No, it's okay.
No.
Just help me on.
The bottom line is that the bill requires that on or before the first day of the 2025-26 school year, the policy has to be in place. And basically, breaking it down to its simplest terms, you have to make sure that your policy is compliant with, and luckily, because the district has been ahead of it, you must comply with the standards required to ensure that library materials meet the law. And basically, the biggest change of this in terms of acquisition of library materials, and I know you talked about it a lot, is that nothing is going to get to go on the shelf until you all approve it. And that's really the big policy piece. Now, the challenges and the reconsideration process, there are also requirements for that. And that's what we've done to ensure that this incorporates those requirements. But the bottom line is that you have to have the policy that says no new library books, new ones, are going to go on a shelf until you guys actually are the ones to approve it. That's the bottom line. And your policy has to specify that by the first of the year.
Okay, well, I'm not terribly comfortable with being the purchasing power up here. I trust librarians to do their job. I know they do it really well every single day. But help me understand, because I'm really struggling with the DLAC. I just don't think it's an additional step that we need when we've done such a good job to put those processes in place already.
Well, and again, as been explained, that part you do have discretion to create or not. Obviously, the administration has made a recommendation. That part you do have discretion over, so you're not required to have that part of it by day one, but the rest of it you do have to have by day one. And that is to ensure that, again, everyone understands, as the new school year starts, that nothing gets on the shelf until the board approves it. That's the bottom line.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Villarreal?
I just have one question. This is right to you. Let's say, this is just talking here. We decided that we didn't want to do a DLAC.
Mm-hmm.
What liability position do we put ourselves in if we don't take that extra step?
Well, it's not really a question of you're going to incur liability to the school district because it is discretionary, but just keep in mind, I mean, if the discretion is taken away from you, if you should get presented with 50 parents that say, we want you to form a DLAC. And then at that point, you don't have discretion, you then have to form it. So it's not like you're going to be liable one way or another, but as far as having discretion whether to create that committee, you have it. unless at such time that 50 parents come to you and say, we want you to form it, and then you have to form it.
So related to that, I will point out on page 1 of the policy, the green paragraph. Ooh, I just got rid of it on my screen. Specifically says that there it is, under responsibility, the board may form. So it has, it does not say shall. And as pointed out by Mrs. Landry earlier, that's a separate discussion for this board. It's not on the agenda to discuss tonight or not. So the local policy allows that flexibility and that discussion at a future date, in my opinion.
That's right. Yeah, because you obviously, if you do create it, whether it's because you choose to or because you get the requisite petition from parents, then at some point, obviously, you all have to take action to appoint the members that you all want to appoint for the committee.
But then related to that, to your point, Mr. Jarrett, when are we scheduled to try to bring forward titles for us to approve? What is that current time frame?
So currently,
regardless of the DLAC or not, what is your current schedule?
Right now, well, we're kind of thinking around December and March. And so what that would entail is essentially librarians will be able to start curating their list of books they're interested in ordering. And then we will have the schedule when it'll be posted. We'll have it all done through a Google form so that way we can collect comments. And then, of course, in December, we will bring it to the board with each book. And then if there was any concerns, you guys would get that. But our recommendation, well, our schedule right now is looking at December and March.
Okay. And with this new law, has to be posted for 30 days, so that would be posted around the beginning of November, basically.
Yeah, it's a pretty quick turnaround once we start the process going.
Okay.
But we feel pretty confident we can do it.
Okay. And that process is going to happen whether we have a DLAC or not.
Correct.
I mean, now the DLAC would then add an extra layer in there
Yes,
that
sir.
we'll have to discuss at some point, hopefully very soon. But
Yes, sir.
okay.
Just
Yes.
one more quick question, just so I'm clear. Because the word is may and not shall, we're voting merely on the policy tonight, but then in a future board meeting, we decide if we want the DLAC to be part of the process.
That is how the policy is currently
Okay.
written.
Just
I mean, it
wanted to be
doesn't
clear.
say that we have to have that future
Sure.
discussion. It says that we may.
We may.
I
All
mean,
right.
but to Mr. Lopez's point, we have to have a policy. That's why we're meeting on Ms. Shelton's birthday. You have a question? Oh, okay.
So Mr. Byer, just so I want to be clear with everybody, if you look at this to take action as presented, so I just want you to, is our recommendation is to adopt DFB local, which includes a minimum of 2 open session meetings for approving all procured. We also recommend the board selects and forms a DLAC. So we're asking you tonight to vote to approve a DLAC. Now, you are the board. You can do what you want. Our recommendation is let's go ahead and do it. We want to continue to partner with our parents and continue to do, because what we don't want to do is it's about efficiency. It's really about, if we're going to get ready and we're going to start this process and get them going, the more that we know on the front end of this and that we can set it up and structure it, the better you're going to get to do your job, and the faster, quite frankly, we're going to move. If we have to continually shift sand, as Mr. Jarrett likes to say, and now all of a sudden you come in, then we're going to scramble at that last minute, and that's the process that quite frankly, I think you're concerned about, and so am I, is just making sure that we do it well, and then bring you guys a recommendation at the end.
Correct, because our line of thinking was we would rather start the year off with one, because let's say one is triggered in October, then everything comes to a halt, because we're having to select those members and then also train them on our collection development policy. So that would change our due dates, where maybe we only get to order one time a year. So that was kind of our line of thinking and why we made the recommendation. I know it's not ideal, but that was kind of what we were coming from as a department.
Any other questions?
So when you say train them, what does that look like?
So we would provide training on how as librarians we vet titles. So we look at things like audience level. We would look at what level of school is requesting this particular title, but also looking at the community feedback. When we provide those book resumes, what does that look like? And then also going over our NEISD collection development policy and how you build a diverse collection. The fact that we're not eliminating viewpoints, we're not doing any of that. We simply are following our collection development policy. So making sure that those members of that DLAC are well aware of our collection development policy. So as they're looking through these lists and the community feedback, they're well aware of how to make those decisions and those recommendations to the board.
And how much time do you think this will require of a volunteer?
We are requiring one DLAC meeting per approval process. But in terms of the time on their own to review community feedback, that'll depend on how much community feedback is gathered and also the number of titles that are put up for
22,000, I think you said.
That's total per year, but we're thinking between 4 and 5, I would say, at a time. So that's pretty time.
And on top of that, there's training.
Correct.
And how long is it? How much?
I would say a one-time session with the members once they're selected by our department.
And that's maybe what, 45 minutes? Yeah.
Okay.
So that could be theoretically combined with
this session,
with whatever
with
the session
training,
is, the
the
meeting
thing itself.
kind of thing, I would think.
We could.
And
Just guessing.
so my final thing, because you probably already know where I want to vote, so I'm going to ask you as the expert, do you need this? Do you want this?
I would say, just based on the policy and the way the law that is written and its clear message of partnering with parents and partnering with the community and providing that transparency, I would say I would much rather start the year with a committee and have all those systems in place so that we prevent even furthering of approval of lists.
Understood. Thank you.
I have one more question. Sorry. So on page 6, for the appeal process, it says the committee shall prepare a written report of its finding and recommendations submitted to the superintendent and the board. The board shall consider and take action on any appeal to its level under the applicable complaint process at the first open meeting held after the date of the appeal is filed. Where in the process do we notify the person who submitted the appeal?
After the third level or the second level, we notify the requester after each decision is made. But as that moves up, then obviously they just move up to the next level, and that's their chance to appeal when they receive notice of the decision by the CLAC or the DRC. And then the DLAC would make the recommendation to the board.
And once the recommendation is made, the appellant is notified? It
Yes.
doesn't really say in here that.
Yes, they are.
Okay. I'd like to
Clarify that.
that the individual filing the appeal will also be notified of the status and the report of the findings to the board on the specific date of the board meeting so that they're aware of what date that will go to the meeting. So in that last paragraph where it says, the board shall consider and take action of any appeal to its level under the applicable complaint process at the first open meeting held after the date the appeal is filed, we should add the appellant will be notified or shall be notified of the date of that meeting and the status of the appeal.
I'm looking at Mr. Lopez. I mean, I don't write policy, Mr. Lopez. I'm not a policy expert. What would you?
It would just simply say the individual who filed the challenge shall be made aware of the hearing before the board and the documentation that the board will consider. Because they're getting a copy of everything at each level, so they'll obviously, all that would be part of the record. In that way, it'll look kind of like a grievance does, where you get a packet containing everything that's been considered at the lower levels. It really would operate the same way, but including the language is not, shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Do I have a motion to approve policy EFB as presented with the addition of notifying the appellant, whatever that word is?
How about we'll just say with the language that Mr. Lopez just said on record?
With the language that we can get.
Will that work?
Yes. That Mr.
Okay, and then we'll copy that over into policy.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. I think we'll need a little roll call here. Ms. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Chidgey? Nay for Mr. Byer. Ms. Villarreal?
Aye.
Ms. Cox?
Nay.
Ms. Landry?
Aye.
Ms. Shelton? All right. Motion passes, was that 4-3? 5-2, I'm sorry, 5-2. Thank you very much. Item 3, possible action regarding board policy FNCE local. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Byer. Tyler Shoesmith, Executive Director for Pupil Personnel Services, will come up to the podium, but before he presents, Dr. Micah would like to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shoesmith, for giving me a moment here to speak while Jason. So, this is one of those policies, folks, that I just want you to know, once again, just like what you heard about libraries, we started doing this before the law mandated it, quite frankly. We started allowing it, and I think the process worked great. Unfortunately, we got a law. I worked really hard this past legislative session to really help lawmakers understand that not everything has to be legislated. Unfortunately, we still have a law that now we have to do it, because what I said and what our campuses were able to do at 16 of our schools this past year was work with staff, students, parents, and reach some good agreements around what it should look like at their individual campus. Ms. Thompson, I know you had a daughter at one of those schools. And the beauty of it was, folks, is I got one complaint the entire year. That was it. And the only complaint that I ever received was when a parent reached out to me and said, I'm all for it. I don't believe my child should be on their phone during instruction. Absolutely. But by gosh, you're not going to take that phone from my child. Because in the event of an emergency, I want to know that they're okay. That was the one complaint. I agreed with them, by the way. I went to Austin to a safety conference. Chief, you weren't there. It was Mr. Duran. But I listened to a story over a tragedy in another state where they had a cell phone and they made kids turn it in, put it in a pocket, and have to put it at the front of a room or whatever. And there was a horrific tragedy. It was a school shooting that happened. And just like I still have my 21 and 19-year-old on Life 360 because I want to know where they are. I'm just a dad. And I want to know what they're doing. Sometimes I want to know what they're doing at 1 o'clock in the morning. Right? And so in this event, that tragedy happened. Of course, media immediately descended, things started going, and the district pushed out a message that said, we have relocated all of our students to their reunification site. Just like I would do if that were. I would have, my adrenaline would be high. I would be absolutely in a panic wondering where my child is. So that mother pulled up whatever tracking device that they had and watched that phone never move. So that mother came to the conclusion that their child was a casualty in that. So she did what any parent would do, jumped in that car and raced to that reunification site because she wanted answers, only to find her child fine at that site. Because in that commotion, in that chaos, that child left that phone behind. Right before this evening, now look, folks, I just did 4 convocations today that many of you were a part of. But today, right before I came down here, I made a call to a dad from your district, Miss Thompson, who said, Dr. Mike, I've read this policy. I've got a lot of heartburn. I don't like it. I want to know that you need to reassure me you have some discretion. And I said, I do. What is your concern? And he said, I don't want you taking my phone from my child. You don't understand the anxiety I have in today's world. And folks, let me tell you, one, I hate that parents have that. They shouldn't. But that's real. And he said, I want to know that I can communicate to that child. My child is in high school. Not only that, in that event, because I don't even want to think about it, but I do. He said, I also sometimes know that, hey, Mom was going to pick you up tonight, but guess what? Mom's not coming. It's going to be Grandma. And I need to be able to reach out to her. So I said to him, and I reassured him, Ms. Thompson, that the policy tonight we were bringing is truly doing what you all asked me to do and charged me to do. Listen to our community, listen to our kids as we did all last year through Student Voice. Because we asked them these types of things. And the stories I heard from kids about, hey, I'm waiting on a coach from a university to give me a call. And Dr. Mike, I don't get to pick when that call comes. They tell me it's coming at 1:30. And I'm going to need that phone. I want to be able to work with my teacher to say, I've got an extenuating circumstance. Here it is. How can we make this work? Another young lady said to me, Dr. Micah, my dad is not allowed to make personal calls at his work during the day. I'm responsible to call Granddad every day to make sure he takes his insulin. You can't take it. I think those are all very reasonable things. I also know, and you heard it today, from our kids, they don't mind rules. They like boundaries. But they want reasonableness, and they want us to take into account that they too have lives outside of that school. Many of them have jobs that they need to communicate with. So listening to all of those things, folks, Mr. Shoesmith's going to roll this out because I think this is something that, quite frankly, people have read what some folks are doing, and I think what we tried to do is use what you've charged us through the Balanced District Scorecard of looking at students, staff, stakeholders, and stewardship. Because folks, looking at buying those pouches, that's over $1.2 million. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather put $1.2 million back into the classroom with kids and teachers than lining the pocket of some vendor, right? So, Mr. Shoesmith, thank you for letting me get on my soapbox a minute, but I'm going to, Ms. Shelton?
I have a question, and you may be getting ready to answer it, but your second line says that these are the minimum requirements, and the schools may decide to implement a more restrictive policy. I thought you want me to stop talking, don't you?
Let's go ahead and get through the presentation, and then we'll go to questions.
Ms. Shelton, he's actually going to cover that and the why.
Okay.
All right?
Good evening, and thank you, Dr. Micah, for that introduction. So we will go over House Bill 1481. The first couple items on this slide is the shalls. So we have the shalls, things that you have to incorporate into the policy. The mays are things that you have some discretion over. And then the must, things that must be included into the policy that we've provided for you for a recommendation for approval. The overall bill, it has some guidelines as to what we need to have in the language for the policy. things that you have that are obviously discretionary, things you can choose to do. And what we put together, what we believe to be, is a rather reasonable policy that is hopefully meeting the needs of all the parties interested. So out of the bill, and I just find the first item a little bit comical because they have put telephone. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to parlay, but you know, it could be possible. I know they may have learned their lesson with House Bill 114 and vapes, and they didn't include old school cigarettes in that. They elevated everything else, so they want to make sure there could be a possible mode of operation for someone to come in with a telephone. Who knows? But these are the items. And just know, by extension, this would also include AirPods or things that are connected to a cellular device that is capable of communication. So when they talk about any other device capable of telecommunication, that would likely also include those peripheral devices, though they haven't explicitly stated that within this bill. The big piece here that we'll move into, and this is the language that we're going to look at for the actual bill, which is the proposed update. Next slide here. So I broke up the bill into a couple different slides so that if you had any questions about each of those slides, we're happy to engage on those questions. This is the same verbiage you'll see in policy, and that just note that TEA did provide some guidance as to what their suggestions might be for a model policy, and we've reviewed that, and they have specifically stated at the beginning of that document is that the district needs to define what a school day is. And so by that definition, and speaking to Mr. Menes and Dr. Micah and Mr. Lopez, looking at what exactly a school day means, that is the instructional time when kids are in front of a teacher, from bell to bell within that instructional period of time. What we're looking at with regards to this policy and our recommendation is that phones would be accessible during passing periods and or lunch, but not during instructional times when they're sitting in front of a teacher. And phones are expected to be off and put away and out of sight. And that is specifically written into this bill, this policy as well. Now, to your question about the restrictive part, because when we get into what a school can do, now we know that many schools already have put together a policy or a local policy for their school that has been in place for the last year or maybe more than 1 year that has been restrictive. So you have a school that says you can't have the cell phone out all day, and you can have it at the beginning of the school or after school. And some campuses have only at lunchtime, and that is based on their community standards. What we're looking at with this policy is based on, we'll get to the disciplinary guidelines and what that looks like, so we do have to have that in policy. But they're looking at what fits best with my community, what fits best with the policy, and ensuring that we're meeting the needs of everyone based on, especially Dr. Micah's examples and the stories he gave. The items that we're looking at here, the requirement pieces, these are super important because these are the things that TEA has identified as what are provisions that we have to include inside the bill. One is looking at kids who have a special education need. It's in their IEP or their 504. One call that I received was from our folks that work with our NETS kiddos, that they work on off-site. They work at different locations around the city, and they take via trans, and they have those apps on their phones, and that's how they schedule their time to get picked up and transported to their work site. And so that's a provision that's been included already. There's a documented need based on a directive from a qualified physician. So that piece looks at our kiddos that may have like an insulin pump or something that requires like a Wi-Fi connection or Bluetooth connection. As long as it's a qualified physician, they're able to provide that documentation. And the other piece has to do with the health and safety requirements imposed by law. So there may be some mass messaging or application that some point in the future we have as a communication method for our students as to alerting from one part of the school to another, that they'll need to have those phones available, or an application to that effect. But that piece is in the requirement of the policy. The personal use during non-instructional time, I touched on that piece, which is what we're looking at specifically before school, after school, during passing periods, the non-instructional time, and lunch. Now, like I said, schools can be more restrictive, and that would be communicated, as principals have, to their community as to what those expectations are. And then we have some provisions about what we typically do, is like acceptable use policies. Those are already in place. for kids to be able to acknowledge how they're allowed to use cellular devices or any communication device. And lastly, to the other point, which is making sure where they're going to be stored. So we talked about pouches or putting them in a container over here. Or when I first heard pouches, you know, I've had some experience with them when you go to a concert, you know, those yonder bags and things like that. My first thought, though, as I think back, is like having to deal with all the different, like when we were doing clear backpacks, you know, and some of them were to a good level and some weren't, and they were breaking, they're having to replace them. And when I did research in other districts, looking at how they were utilizing these bags, there was like a large section of information that was like replacement fees. Parents had to pay $25 or they had to pay $15 for the replacement of that bag. And it seemed to be encompassing a large amount of work of what the administrators were having to keep up with, because if a kid didn't have it and they lost it or it was ripped or purposely ripped, or they were able to subvert it somehow, it became an extreme burden for the schools to be able to handle, because now you have to store all these things and you have to keep track of them. And it became, what I could see, a very difficult and untenable situation for many of these districts. And so the last piece of the policy here, and this was already part of it was already included in our policy, which talks about confiscation of these devices. So phones can be confiscated. They currently can be confiscated now. They used to charge, well, the law removed like a $15 charge fee for that. It says you can charge up to $25 for, like, but that's not something we're considering. Now, the confiscation of a device, that was also currently in place with regards to the time frame. Like, we could keep it, we'd not keep a device, but if no one came to pick it up over 90 days, then we're disposed of it. There now in this policy, it changes it to in writing. You have to notify the parent. Typically, it's a call home. Hey, don't forget you have your child's phone here, and it would just sit there. And then I don't think people ever threw them away. They just stayed in the vault forever. They just kind of sit there. No one is willing to throw them away. So there may be some Nokias sitting in a safe somewhere. And then the last piece is like other non-telecommunication personal devices. We have those items in the handbook. So those mostly reference like iPods. Remember the old things that used to just carry music and that was it? So typical like technology like that.
You mean a Walkman?
I'm sorry?
A Walkman?
Walkman, and the CD Walkman too, right? Extra bass boost. All right. And so the last slide here for this topic here is the proposed minimum disciplinary consequences. So the proposed consequences, we have several that we've listed out. They are in no certain order and can be used in conjunction with another consequence. This is not a graduated level, so it doesn't start off with verbal warning first. It could be parent notification, it could be confiscation, it could be one or a combination of those items. But we wanted to be sure that there were some things that were spelled out as to what the possible consequences are. We're not looking at out-of-school suspension for cell phone violations. If there is a conflict that arises from a student that has been asked to hand over their phone, that is not a cell phone violation any longer. That's failure to follow administrative directive. That's a whole other disciplinary issue. So just the possession of a cell phone is not going to constitute like out-of-school suspension, but we have included, in-school suspension. And what we've come to find is that talking to administrators, lunch detention sometimes seems to be the most effective because that's when they get to see their friends and it has the most impact on them. That and sometimes the after-school suspension. So those are already working on some of the campuses with regards to cell phone use, and like they're violating the policy. And I think that with our campus working with our principals and making sure that they're effectively communicating this information out to them, they've, like Dr. Malka said, only one complaint that they've had. I've talked to multiple principals, shared some of the policy that they have a good feeling about what we've presented here, because it does allow them to not have to navigate the community, I guess blowback or, feedback on like, well, I have these specific instances that you didn't take into account. Or like many of the examples that Dr. Micah gave, we have a lot of different things that could happen. Like if a phone's confiscated on a Friday night, you're like, well, okay, well now I don't have my phone for the weekend. Well, most families don't have phones at home. I haven't had a home phone in, I don't know, probably 10 years. Like, how is that single parent family going to be able to navigate with that child not having a phone and like not having a graduated scale that is pretty clear and plain for the students to understand that their principals have communicated to them. So, and with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
So Ms. Shelton, so that exact example that you stated. The non-negotiable is during instructional time, which is the 75,600 minutes. That phone is to be off and out of sight. Unless, as you can see in the policy, a list of those ways. The reason that we are allowing it, that's the minimum, is because we have a couple of schools that actually worked with their communities, worked with their teachers, and worked with their kids and said, we're not going to allow access to it at all. And that community has been okay with it.
My question, though, is I thought we had a policy that says that the schools can't be more restrictive than what we have established. Am I not remembering that? They can be more. Okay, so that was.
They
okay.
may.
They
Not,
may be.
they not shall. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right.
Okay?
My-
But again, we want to, we recognize, and as you all went through, like, look, today we listened to 4 different sets of students, right? And each one of them was different because
Sure.
they took on the feeling of their communities, right? We know we're such a large district, they're not all the same. And so what we're trying to do is set that standard,
Sure.
but then allow some flexibility within it, as long as we're working with staff,
Right.
students, and our parents.
I'm aligned, and it makes sense to me. I just wanted to make sure we were within our own board policy. My second question is, does instructional time include extracurricular? So if I'm on the football field or I'm, drill team, is that also considered instructional time and no phones?
No, that's not considered instructional time. Those aren't the counted minutes.
Unless it's during athletic period.
Right.
If it's during the academic day, so we're not talking about 5 o'clock out on the football field.
Okay.
But at our middle schools, a lot of times first period is
soccer.
athletics.
Right.
Yep, it's out. It's out of sight. It's off.
Okay.
That is not okay. But once 4 o'clock hits or 4:30 hits and they're out on the soccer field, the school day's over, and that's different at that point.
But that's the point where the school can be more restrictive because they can
Sure.
have rules that
So
say.
just remember, we have to report to the state 75,600 instructional minutes.
Yep.
That is where we're telling that's no phones.
Okay.
Because yours should be learning, not watching TikTok. All right, to learn what a telephone is or a Nokia. Because we all laughed, and we're obviously all old enough to know that.
Ms. Cox?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciated that. And I'm all for phones not being where they're distracting. But I guess and I know there'll be a lot of unhappy campers on Monday, so my apologies for that. But my question is, so what I hear from a lot of kids is that it's hard because one teacher will do it one way, another teacher will do it another way. So and each campus can do it their own way, which is how it should be. But how do we make that uniform, I guess, as students move throughout the school day?
Right.
Ms. Cox, I think I can attempt to answer that question. So the uniformity is going to be that during the instructional time in any school, we are not going to have our cell phones. They're going to be off and out of sight. That's a uniformity piece. During all instructional, like Dr. Micah said, it's at 75,600 minutes because passing periods, lunch don't count as part of those minutes. And so that's uniformity. It's going to be for some schools that may not have had that provision last year or that rule last year of during instructional time. That's going to be a change for some kids and some teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have many schools who already had that in place. So it's going to be a matter of communicating with teachers, communicating with students, communicating with parents. Not once, not twice, but over and over
3
again,
times
just
a
like we
dozen,
do with
yeah.
any other rule.
Sure.
When the whole vaping thing came in several years ago, the same thing happened. We had to communicate, and so we're going to continue to do that. And that's going to be a charge to our principals to communicate in every manner that they can to ensure that everyone understands that instructional time is sacred. We're not using phones during that time.
So just from one of my schools in my cluster, from kids I talked to, one teacher wants it, it's fine if it's just off and on their person. Another teacher says, here's the basket, put it in there. So that's what I'm really trying to figure out is, will every teacher tell their student, you keep your phone on your person? Because that's kind of the confusing part, is each kid has to remember what each teacher wants to do.
Right,
with the
and
phone.
it could be, and that's going to be, one thing that we talk about here is, we don't want to mandate to principals how to run their school.
Sure.
Because we can't do that
Sure.
from central office.
No.
That's impossible.
And we
But
shouldn't,
we
no.
could say consistency is key for kids in ensuring that they understand what is occurring,
Mhm.
and that way they're not confused. So that is definitely going to be one of, the message that we're giving to them. That being said, there may be situations right now where one teacher may say, this is how you do it, another, but as long as they're meeting, again, our minimum standards, and that we're following the law with that, that's really what we're concerned about.
And
thank you.
and Ms. Cox, I will tell you that the consistency piece is always our challenge, right? It always is. Our message will be to principals, should you all adopt this, is you need to bring uniformity through to make certain that kids, because I heard that loud and clear last year through Student Voice, is that we just tell us what it is, but you can't vary it. My concern with it really is more around substitutes and how they're going to, so we know we're going to have to tackle that bit by bit and make certain that they understand that they can't be providing that access, because either the kids, they sit and listen to music or something, or it's a filler, right? No, you can't have it. Like, we're going to have to be, and we really need to rest on our administrators out on the campuses to help us enforce that piece and to train all the folks. This is the best way to do it.
Well, on the bottom of page 1, it says devices shall be stored on the student's person or belongings during instructional time.
Yep.
So it really doesn't give any flexibility for putting it in a basket or in some other pouch. It specifically states that they're off, out of sight, on their person, or in their belongings. And so I think that's the rule, according to how I'm reading this.
My concern is the inconsistency of consequences. That's the grievance that's coming, right? My kid got theirs confiscated, Miss Landry's kid got a verbal warning. Are we doing anything to support consistency in terms of how we discipline students that are not obeying the rules?
First, Mr. Shoesmith.
Please go ahead.
Oh, well, one thing I can tell you, Ms. Shelton, is when we saw, so look, remember, 88th session, they mandated that anybody caught with a vape, you had to go to alternative, right? Gave us a 0 discretion. I've heard enough heartburn from parents. Hey, by the way, the ledge obviously did, because they changed that law. That's that component of it that we need to allow some flexibility in, to understanding that again, we heard it today from kids, get to know me as a person. Hey, you've never done this before. I'm not going to confiscate your phone because you're never in trouble. Just remember, this is my verbal warning, Miss Shelton, put that phone away. Now, Miss Villarreal, she and I have gone back and forth on this phone thing a little bit, right? I've tried to help her because she's just not complying. And so I may take it because I've had that ability. Our teachers already possess that component to it, where they can individualize some of this and differentiate between a child who, this has been a repetitive type behavior and this hasn't. Now, could there be one that takes it a little too far? Yeah, absolutely. I'm a principal. I had that happen to me before. But that's where those administrators come in and say, and have those discussions around, let's talk about reasonableness here, and let's talk about what we're trying to get. Because again, we heard it today, and I apologize, I'm kind of being a broken record, but the kid said, I don't mind rules. Just let me know what they are.
Yes, and
And the principals are, sorry, go ahead.
I trust the principals and I trust our staff. The other thing we heard today was, don't judge me because you don't know me. And the other thing we heard today is sometimes people don't seem like they, right? So, and my guess is everyone is going to do this, but the conversation with our teachers about consistency and how we move forward is really important, because the other thing our students said to us today, right? And that's my primary concern, because looking forward, if there's not some level of consistency in the way we implement the discipline, those people will be sitting right there with a grievance.
And Ms. Shelton, if I may, when we look at discipline, especially for the same infraction, which would be cell phones, or any other one, we're always looking at progressive discipline. So we're starting at a point and we move through. And even now, before this law, we had principals who had their progressive discipline regarding cell phones. And so that is something that they're going to communicate, again, with their students, with their families, and with their employees. So that way everyone understands that this is how progressive discipline works with the cell phone policy.
Thank you.
Are we going to have any sort of, well, to be frank, you and I have had this conversation when my kid was going to school, and you probably have a few of those Nokias of his in that safe because of him.
Just a couple.
I'm probably more than that, because we had a situation where my husband was critically ill and we never knew when he was going to be, admitted to the hospital or, whatever. Are we going to give any special dispensation to children in situations such as, because he could not turn his phone off. I would have hung him, on by a hook if he would have done that, because we had no idea what was going to happen. So, is there a way that if there is a medical emergency situation, that the teachers are made aware that that phone in that child's backpack may ring?
So one of the things that yes, and what I will say is that if you look at our proposed update, we do have other identified needs that were communicated to district employees. So it's open there for needs that, again, we couldn't list them all because there could be hundreds of them. The thing that we also have to consider is that we also have to ensure that we're complying with law. So there's a delicate balance there, but I think as long as there's communication between the families and our principals, our administrators, to ensure that these are documented types of situations. And again, in our case, back in 2007, phones were just kind of coming out, the iPhones and whatnot, and it was new to all of us, and anyone thought it was just picked up, and there wasn't really any consideration because we didn't really understand the technology, and I think, quite frankly, we were scared of it, and so everyone's reaction was just to pull. I think now we understand where there are, considerations that we have to look at, and we have to work together to make sure that those situations don't occur.
But
So-
I think it needs to come with the proper documentation,
Agreed.
such as actual
Right.
from the doctors and things like that, showing
Right.
that it is a medical issue. I don't think a handwritten note from just somebody, it should suffice.
Sure, there's got to be vetting from the administration on these types of instances. I would think that they would be rare, but at the same time, in our policy, we do allow for some flexibility regarding that.
But is it spelled out that it needs to have proper documentation, that is an actual issue? Is it spelled out in?
So our policy, the strategic part of this is more wide open, and then when we start looking at our regulations or even our code of conducts, we can start adding those pieces in there to make it more specific.
Okay, so that comes at a later date.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's also language about, and I think everybody would assume this is for a health issue, that, there's directives from qualified physicians. I mean, so there's language in here that will kind of tie that down, but as Mr. Jimenez said, I mean, there's probably potentially 1,000 different reasons somebody might have one, and that has to be a local conversation with either that instructor, that administrator, whoever that is, and kind of work that out with that that parent or guardian.
And I want to just remind you all, it's, I brought up the whole thing about mandating a DAP placement for a vape, and now they've backed. When things change, right, we put our best foot forward, and we're going to take a look at data and things and what we're hearing, and if we think we need to make a change to it, then you're going to see the policy back here. And we're going to talk to our administrators and continue to talk to kids and parents and say, okay, hey, you know what, I think we need to tighten this up a little bit more, or maybe we need to make this tweak here or there. For us, we don't, we want to start here and then work our way forward and see how things go. If we see a lot of inconsistency in it, then that's something we got to address. That's something we all have to own and figure out why that's inconsistency, and now how do we how do we take care of it and address it so that we don't have that, because Ms. Thompson, that's what we heard a lot, from the students that I talked to from Churchill's. The inconsistency part was hard for them, so we know we need to really work on that, and that's, should you adopt the policy, we're going to have to start to work on that tomorrow.
And I think some of that, going to those student voice meetings, was more about the sort of flexibility of having the phone put away or not put away, I think is some of it. And so in this situation, to me, it's pretty black and white. It says it has to be turned off, it has to be put away. Now the discipline part of it, those are the things that we'll have to monitor and make sure that we're tracking. One question I had is, and maybe I'm either not reading this correctly, but clarify for me. So we talk about allowing them to use it during non-instructional time, but then the second to last bullet says that they have to obtain approval from a district employee to use a personal communications or similar device for personal use during non-instructional time. And so we're telling them they can use it during a non-instructional time, but then we're saying that they have to have approval for that. So under instructional and other use, and am I misreading that? The second to last bullet.
So instructional other use, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm finding exactly where you're looking.
So under instructional and other use, if it starts with the student shall receive, there's 5, the second to last bullet, the fourth bullet says that they have to receive, obtain prior approval from a district employee to use a personal communications or similar device for personal use during non-instructional time.
Right, and so the administrator from the principal and their guidelines would then grant them that permission. So whatever the campus sets out as their rules,
okay,
or policies, their local policy,
and as we just discussed,
to do that.
There are some that don't allow that.
Correct.
Because of their local discussions and decisions. So,
correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have just 2 quick questions. When does the student sign the agreement?
So that will be probably found out later, because once this pass, we'll communicate out to the schools. Some schools already have one in place, some don't. We have, we're expected to have a model agreement come from TEA, to what that looks like, but we'll see when that happens and give them the opportunity to be able to see what that looks like. If they don't have one in place already, utilizing that. The bill, once this is passed, hopefully get this the first day of school, that way they can get that communicated out to parents, and that way they can get it. But it's not part of the acceptable use policy currently that they sign with the student handbook, because it's not currently included with it, but this would be an addendum to that. So.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, say a C-Tech kid misses the bus. I think they typically get housed in the library. So is that considered instructional time, or is that not instructional time?
So can you explain the situation again? Just
a kid, they come to pick students up at various campuses to take them to C-Tech, for example, and say for whatever reason the kid doesn't make it on the bus, and they go to the office and say, I missed the bus. I think at least the way it works on one of my campuses is that they then go to the library, I guess, to be housed or kept there until they can find a way to get them to the campus. So is that time in the library instructional time?
So I would say yes, because
Yeah,
it's not
okay.
a passing period.
Okay.
Or lunch.
Or lunch.
So yes, ma'am.
So that's the defining, it's not passing or lunch. Okay, perfect, thank you.
And again, that bell has rung to start the next period, so that is now instructional time.
I just have one more question.
Actually, Ms. Villarreal, Ms. Thompson had a question.
I'm sorry.
I meant to recognize her, and then we'll get to you.
It wasn't necessarily a question, but I've seen this in practice all last year at Churchill, and not everything about it is perfect, but we're trying and going in the right direction for kids, and so I think that's what's important. And there are some things we got to figure out along the way, and that's okay, but it's good for kids.
Okay, I have a question. Are we going to say, because all of us have smartwatches, are we going to say that they can carry their cell phone in their backpack and the smartwatch also has to come off? Or just leave the smartwatch at home?
Yeah, I'll go back. So the smartwatches are included in the prohibited, or the communication device. So they, according to our policy, should we choose to pass it, then that would be included. They would have to be off and out of sight.
So we're also in the prohibition is a tablet, but we're handing these kids tablets.
So the bottom item says not included in the prohibition is any electronic device provided by the school district.
Because as we discussed, the STAR exam.
Right, I
And I
understand.
know that's only one example, but yes, so it's a little, we can give them advice, but they can't bring their own personal device.
Or imagine going to one of the tech app classes or any of our computer type classes and you're not allowed to use anything in there. Of course you can. It's issued by us for some instructional reason. This is, I believe, Mr. Shoesmith, smartwatches and those types of things are actually listed in the law, correct?
Correct. It's
Those
the
are
fourth-
itemized in law.
Yes, sir.
Stating it must include telephones, cell phones, tablets, smartwatches, radio devices, paging devices.
That's
Well,
correct.
I'm aware of this and everything, and the reason why I'm asking this is because it's saying that in the prohibition is the telephone. If we're allowing the kids, during passing periods to use that, are we telling them that they have, to essentially leave your smartwatches at home and the only thing you're allowed to have in your backpack is the telephone? This is where I think this could get very, very confusing because they're going, well, you're letting me have the telephone, but you're not allowing me to have this over here. So are we going to spell this out? Does this mean that during our instructional time that the smartwatches have to be off their wrists and in their backpacks?
They have to be powered off and on their person or in their belongings. So, I mean, that's up to you and your family to decide if you want to take it with
Risk
you
it.
and then just not have it turned on all day, or just leave it at home. So, I think it's, again, here's the list of prohibited devices. Our policy says that you have to have it turned off and put away, and that's up to you to decide how you want to handle that. Gigi?
This is going one step further and maybe another discussion, but I can see our teachers using their cell phones. It's not part of this law at all, but that seems unfair. If, they're texting or whatever they're doing and our kids are not allowed to. Just, it's not for tonight, but I'm curious about that.
Well, Miss Gigi, if we're teaching, we're supposed to be teaching, not be texting on our telephones. As a principal, I address that multiple times with staff. That's unacceptable. You are in here to monitor students and deliver instruction. You shouldn't be. But sometimes, again, teachers would say, you know what, listen, my husband's sick or whatever. Okay, that's different, right? But no, if we're expecting our students to do these, we should be modeling those same types of behaviors to them.
What is the status of the legal update on this? Because currently the legal states that it only addresses pagers as our current legal policy.
I'll have to check with that. I'm not even sure if it's going to be in update 126 or not.
Okay.
Mr. Byer again, this stuff there's so much of it. I mean, there really is. And it seems like Mr. Jacob and I talk, I'm like, oh, now we found something else. It's like, goodness, man.
I'm
Like,
not criticizing it. I'm
No,
just
no.
curious if we knew if that
No.
an updated piece of that was
They-
coming.
we don't
I
know.
assume there will be, but.
They haven't told us a timeline.
Okay.
Like,
That's
I
fine.
attended a TASB webinar, but all it says is at a later date. They're hoping that there's a lot of this coming at the end of this month, but time will tell, right?
Well, I appreciate you all putting this together. I do have a small focus group in my own home that is going to have to abide by this, and my child appreciates the flexibility and the trust, and so having that two-way street between the teacher and the student to say, okay, I trust you to allow me to be responsible for this, and I'll give that trust back. So I think it's a good general policy. Let our local communities make the detailed decisions, and then as we come into potential issues or pitfalls with this, and we'll have to revise it and look at it at that time. So, any other questions or comments? All right. Do I have a motion to? Oh, yes, ma'am, Ms. Shelton.
Thank you. I'm going to end with this one because that might be a little bit of a stretch. On page 40, I just want to reiterate my under first-time offense possession of nicotine.
We're still on a
Oh, I'm
cell phone.
sorry.
So,
Apologies.
yeah, we're still on
Moved ahead.
FNCE local.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay.
I have nothing.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the presented updated board policy FNCE local?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. Do I have a second?
Second.
We'll go. Thank you, Ms. Cox. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Shoesmith.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Item B, instruction and campus administration. One possible action regarding student code of conduct. Mr. Jimenez, Mr.
Yes, sir,
Shoesmith.
Mr. Byer. Tyler will be working through this also.
Hey, it worked perfectly on the first try. Awesome. Good evening again. So tonight we have the Student Code of Conduct for the 25-26 school year. This is our annual request for approval. I will go through the substantial changes that House Bill 6 made to the Chapter 37. We have quite a few items, but I'll try to draw out some of the items that are the, I think I went too quickly. Okay, so some of the items that are the most important just to single out. It was, this is the Chapter 37 cleanup bill, and within this, during the 89th legislation, they, obviously, you referenced the e-cigarettes. That is one piece that is notable that we'll get into a little bit more into the slide deck. Essentially, they removed the mandatory placement of DAP for the first offense, and then they also enhanced some pieces with regards to a teacher's request to remove a student. They broadened the scope of ISS and out-of-school suspensions to include under grade 3 and also for homeless students based on specifics to their behavior. And then they looked at another piece with regards to parental involvement, which is a key piece that we'll touch on. So as I go through this, just know that majority of this information we've trained many of our administrators on already. We met with them on that Friday during leadership. We spend a whole day with assistant principals and principals going over any updates in law. We have small breakout sessions with them. We spend an inordinate amount of time on bullying and investigations, and especially with our 0 to 3 APs and principals, making sure that they have a very good understanding of where this information is on our PPS manual, how to access that, how to access our office to be able to get information on the training documents that we provided to them during that day. So a majority of this, I know it seems like a lot, but just know that our campus administration, and without be remiss without saying, we do also host what we call the Pupil Personnel Services Learning Series, which is a kind of a virtual training that we catch them early in the morning, do 45-minute vignettes with them, and then have office hours after that so that we can talk through any scenarios they're going through. But we have a comprehensive training program for our administrators so that they understand all the different processes that are in place and they know where all the pieces fit.
Can I ask a question about the CBC? I'm sorry. Is this a new position?
No, ma'am. So the campus behavior coordinator has always been there, and our district has had a practice of designating the principal as the campus behavior coordinator.
Okay.
So one thing that was said over this last legislative session, I remember one of the speakers, I think it was one of the law conferences, says you can always identify, like, if there's something new in law, there's something that happened to cause it, right? And so it makes me feel like there was probably an instance where there wasn't an identified campus behavior coordinator somewhere in some district, and they weren't able to identify who is the ultimate responsible party at that school. So they made sure that in this legislative session that it's one person that is identified as the CBC. Other people can help, but that one person. We've always done that as a practice in our district, is designate the principal in that role. These two next items, these are interesting because this came along. These are two discretionary items, that disruptive activities and disruption of classes. I want you to kind of think of perspective of more of like higher education. It does apply to secondary education or our school, but K through 12. But this really has a feel to it, and some of the emphasis behind it is this is like a lockdown of a college facility or a building, or going in and disrupting classes when a professor is speaking. But it also applies to us. It is a Class B misdemeanor, but this is a discretionary offense that they have now put into our categorical offenses. I wouldn't characterize this as someone who walks into class and has an issue with another student. This is more of an organized fashion of disruption. There's a specific intent. There's a characterization of some sort of ideology or something that goes along with it, because we're preventing you from getting to a speaker or listening to somebody who's coming to speak. I think about the political speakers that come to college campuses. This, I feel, mostly applies to that. But just in case it ever comes up, I wanted to make sure you're aware. We have there's quite a bit of shift in mandatory DAP. There are alternative center offenses, and then the ones that then later became mandatory expulsion. So I did highlight in red a couple of these items just so you are aware. They added volunteer, which were underneath their retaliation and harassment, so they added volunteer, and then harassment as well to that mandatory placement. And then deadly conduct used to be a discretionary expulsion. Now it's been moved down, but that's not a felony, so it falls into this category for a mandatory DAP. And then disorderly conduct involving a firearm. You'll see a theme throughout all of this. Anything regarding weapons or handguns or firearms, anything in school or out of school, they're taken pretty seriously. And in addition to that, protecting teachers, there's there were student removal bills enhancing the ISS and OSS. So you see a theme that goes all the way through this.
So I had a question about this actually in the document itself. Are we saying that whether you are at school, at a school event, off campus, or in your own personal life, and you do any of these things, you are automatically moved?
Right. So
Okay.
the way the law states, it has a couple different categorical locations specifically. So you have on campus, at a school-related activity, school function, or you have within 300 feet, or you have off-school property, and that's where you were saying that you're in your own personal life. Then when I say off campus and not at a school-related or school-sponsored activity, that's your own personal life. So typically what happens in those instances where you receive a notification from a law enforcement agency that a student's been arrested for an offense related to one of these items, and that we receive those notifications and we're required to take action.
But it's America, right? You're innocent until proven. So based on an arrest alone, we would send a kid to alternative school?
And if there's a disposition for that case, then what will happen is the family will notify us of the disposition of that case, and if it's been disposed of, if it's dismissed, then we'll weigh the circumstances of the dismissal, and then we'll make a determination if we return the kid back to the home campus if they have not finished their term of placement, or we will continue in there if there's enough merit there to show that the kid poses a danger to the school or to staff members or to students. Okay. And then the last item for the mandatory, just to note, this was a removal. The one that did stay was as a mandatory, sells, gives, or delivers to another person an e-cigarette. And if you have a question about gives, I have a definition for you later.
Give it. What's a give?
I'm sorry?
What does it mean to give? You say you had to.
Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, we'll get there. So these are the new mandatory expulsions. Not all of them are new, just the ones in red. But there's several of them, most of them relating to firearms. And one of the things I saw at one of the legal conferences, just interesting to note, is that, and something I picked up on years ago, is that in Chapter 37 we had like kidnapping and aggravated kidnapping, but they weren't considered mandatory. But it was like the one in black was just kidnapping. They didn't include kidnapping or aggravated kidnapping. So they were just trying to clean it up and say, well, if we have this offense already as a mandatory, why don't we just include these other ones, because it just makes sense. Now, what they did include as well that wasn't previously there was burglary, robbery, and then the aggravated part. And then the last one, which I think is the most important note here to note that directly applies to y'all, is the engaging in conduct contains the elements of assault against a school district employee or volunteer. So that's now a mandatory expulsion. So just note that it isn't all assault under the categorical the Penal Code 2201. It's A1, which is bodily injury. So if they cause bodily injury, then it's mandatory expulsion. So the teacher removal, this is something that has been in place already. There's already process for it, but what they did is, like I emboldened everything in red, they included the repeatedly interferes and then removed the statement of documented by the teacher. Previously, the teacher would have to provide documentation that this child has been a persistent behavior issue, that they've attempted to intervene multiple times and they have not been successful. They've tried to follow the behavior plan. And that's not been successful, so now they want to remove the student from the classroom. This law now removes the documented by the teacher, and they've included that it can be a single incident. So something that is so unruly or disruptive or abusive, one instance could be result in that teacher removing that student from that class. Now, in order to return that kiddo to class, the teacher has to provide a written consent. What will happen, and I think it's probably easier to kind of walk you through briefly the process, is so I'm a teacher, I have Johnny here's constant disruption, one incident happens, throws something in the classroom, it's not enough to be a serious offense, but it's one of many, and I decide I'm going to remove this kiddo from class. So I notify my principal and via email, say I want to remove Johnny. Principal removes Johnny from class, then puts him in another classroom for a period of time, or in ISS, or out of school suspension, or refers him to DAP, which also would probably be in ISS while he's awaiting his conference for DAP placement. At that point, then the teacher is going to meet with the principal and then with the parent, and they will come up with a return to class plan. TA is supposed to send a model of what that return to class plan is going to look like. We don't have one yet, but we will hopefully have one in the near future. But essentially, it's a plan for the kiddo to come back and what that's going to look like. Johnny's going to have a check-in here with this teacher, is going to check in over here with this space. This is where his chill-out zone is. We all come to agreement, and the kid goes back to the class if the teacher agrees in writing that they're allowed to do that. If the teacher doesn't agree to that, or they don't feel that this is strong enough that the kid needs to be permanently removed, then the principal can put that child in another class permanently for the rest of the school year if there's a class available. And at that point, if the student or the parent does not appeal it, then the child will go back to that or go to that new classroom. If the child appeals it, then it goes to the placement review committee. And so the placement review committee is made up by 2 teachers that are voted on by the faculty, and then 1 that's appointed by the principal. They look at all the documentation or the incident, and they make a determination if it's the best interest for the kid to go back to that classroom, or that's the only classroom that the kid can go back to. Then that's where the child has to go, or they decide they're going to place them at that other class. And at that point, the decision is final. Now, if the teacher, go ahead.
So that was one of my other questions. I love the fact that we're giving the teachers more support, right, to be safe in their classroom. I am concerned about the child. So let's say there's not another class for them to go back into. where are we gonna sit them for the rest of the year? Are they gonna go to all their other classes and then go to in-school suspension?
No, we wouldn't continue a punishment like that. We would look at other options and work with the parent if there are other options. But in instances where there have not been another option, let's say pre-K, for example, like we have an early pre-K kiddo that's been moved from one class and then moved to another pre-K class, and we're out of pre-K classes, then we look at another school for that child to go to school.
So we could move the child?
We could, yes. If we're left without any other options, then that's the only place that we could provide support for them.
Does the receiving teacher have a say in this? I mean,
I think teachers always have a say, but they're not part of the committee at that point, or they're not part of the conference with the parent in developing the return to class plan. But I imagine in most instances, the principals are working with all the different teachers at, and I say grade levels because this mostly happens in my experience at elementary, that they're going to be conferencing with the other teachers because they know, well, if I have to move her from this classroom, they're going to have to go to this other classroom, and I want to make sure that teacher's prepared or try to get the situation ready with behavior specialists to support them. But essentially, this is outlining kind of the plan of how, with this new revision to the bill or to Chapter 37, this is how it works for the campus.
so I would assume we would put in supports to help student and teacher in the new classroom. That's not part of this bill, I assume, but, I mean, we want to set everybody up for success, not just move a student.
So the next item, I touched on this briefly, so out-of-school suspensions now applies to grades under 3 in McKinney, which are our homeless kiddos. I do want to draw your attention to the first two bullets. It says conduct that threatens the immediate health and safety, and documented conduct that results in repeated or significant disruption. It used to say assault, which was like assault bodily injury. This obviously lowers the threshold so that if you have a kiddo that is extremely really disruptive, but they haven't significantly harmed someone, which we really don't want them to have to get to that point so that they can take action, that covers this by having a more broader description as to what exactly needs to occur in order to be out of school suspended. And then also a parent could request if a child is being placed in out of school suspension, if they don't have the ability to provide supervision during the school day during that time, they can request to the principal, can we put them in ISS instead? But it is the principal's sole discretion whether or not they want to grant it, and it's supposed to be very infrequent and not regularly used. This should be like a one-time option that the parent's asking for. In-school suspension, you probably have heard there's no limit now. They say you have to review at 10 days. This was kind of I don't want to say anything sideways against TEA, but TEA made a decision a couple of years ago about saying all of a sudden now you can only do 3 days in school suspension. There are so many different mechanisms in our business, not just in discipline, but in special education where kids in ISS, where it already violated like what TEA said. So the legislatures proactively in this year decided, well, we're going to make sure it is absolutely codified law and make sure this is clear for the school district, so it can't be left up to interpretation. They have to be reviewed every 10 days. We've talked, internally talked to principals, with Mr. Menez, myself, and everyone in leadership. We feel 5 days is the cap. We don't want kids sitting in ISS for more than 10 days or 10 days at all for a single offense, and we don't want to get that to be available to be abused, especially if they can be in there in perpetuity. If you reviewed them every 10 days, that's not something we're in favor for. So we're looking at if there's a single incident, we're going to help the campuses understand that this is capped at 5 days, unless it, and this is pending, your decision on the first offense for e-cigarettes and other related things, that the only opportunity that the kid would be in ISS for up to 10 days would be for that first offense. Or if they had to ask for additional days, like we have done in the last couple of years since the TEA made that ruling on ISS from no more than 3, they would have to call our office to review it with us before they were able to do any further than the 5 days that we're saying is a cap. That's been pretty standard right now. I don't want to get into the weeds on why that happens, but it just happens because of some mechanisms in the office that may require a kid to be there a little bit longer in ISS. This is another piece, students with disabilities. So it used to be every time a kid had a bullying allegation, if they were receiving special education services, they had to convene an ARD, an MDR. So they removed that for bullying, cyberbullying, harassment, and making a hit list. Now, likely with harassment, making a hit list, we're going to have to do the MDR, but they removed it only if there's, you still have to do an MDR if there's a change in placement. So it means if they've had up to 10 days out of placement, or there's a placement going to alternative, then you still do the MDR. That's still our practice. But if it was a low-level bullying event where, you know, it's very, very minimal impact and it was just one kid and another, then they would have to convene an MDR, and this removed that requirement to do so. Okay, decision points. We're almost there. First decision point is we're talking about e-cigarettes. So the way the law reads is that the first offense, if they're not placed at the DAP, then they're going to be placed in ISS for 10 school days. And so the question to you, board, is whether or not you want to add an affirmative statement stating that the CBC can refer a student for first offense for e-cigarette to DAP. And that's the decision point I'll ask you to discuss. So I have some information to share with you. And I just note that the discretionary piece that possesses or uses an e-cigarette, that's the discretionary one. It is mandatory that we either do 10 days ISS if we don't place them at the alternative for the first offense. And there is your definition for gives. It's to transfer ownership, control, or possession. So essentially, one of the scenarios that comes up is like we have 3 people in a stall, one person owns the vape, and they're passing it around to 2 other people. That's not conveying ownership. I'm lending it to you just to vape with, and then you give it back to me. But if I give it to you and you have it for the full school day, that's conveying ownership. So that's the sells, gives, or delivers. We've gone through so many different scenarios in our office just trying to think around this, so that was the simplest one I could come up with for you. Okay, so these are vaping or THC and e-cigarette. So the non-THC, that's nicotine vape and anything else. And then we have our THC ones. Those are our felony level THCs. So we have 22, 23, 23, 24, and then 24, 25.
So these are the people that were caught, or what?
Microphone, please.
These are incidences that have come through our office.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Are some of these repeaters? I mean, they're in there 2 or 3
There are
times.
some that are repeaters, but these are individual counts of students. So one student can be counted, but they were caught more than one time, if that makes sense.
Sorry. For the first time, the administrator can say 10 days ISS, but after that, they once again need to go to the alternative campus. Is that accurate?
No, it's discretionary for any possesses or uses.
Okay, thank you.
But not if it's THC, right? Then
That's totally, that's a
Okay.
mandatory.
Okay.
Do we know of the 405 and the 351, what percentage of that is repeat? Like what are unique individuals that only, even if they went through the system more than one time?
Right.
Right? What I'm trying to understand is, of the 405, is it 10 kids and they keep getting caught, or is it 300 kids and, you know?
So our recidivism for in the same year is about 6%, not just for this, but overall. And from year to year, it's about 11%. So a kid gets caught 1 year, gets caught in the second year. And in 1 year, though, it's around 6%. So if all things being equal, it's about 6% of that. I mean, we don't have third-time offenders, but we do have probably less than 30 that were second-time offenders.
Would you infer from the data that is in front of us that the actions that we put in place, from a discipline perspective, have caused our students to walk away from or use the THC and the non-THC less? Because these numbers are trending downward.
Right. If you can say it correlates, both things being true at the same time. The law went into effect. We did see some decrease in the numbers. Whether that's the exact causality, I think we talked about this last time we talked about vaping. I don't have the empirical research to be able to say this is a direct causality because there's so many other factors that come into play. But it could be a cause for it as well. I couldn't say definitive. It's 100% responsible for all the decrease, but I imagine it's for part of it.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question, because it's my understanding that they're actually doing damage to our buildings because they flush the vapes down our toilets and things like this. What are we doing before the kids even have point of entry with a vape? Is there any way that we can get the vapes or take the vapes away from them? What are we doing? Because, frankly, it is doing damage. They are smoking in the bathrooms, essentially. They are doing all of that. So what are we doing to find these vapes?
Are you talking about like a security protocol?
Yeah, what kind of is, I don't even know if that's something we can discuss here, but are we doing anything to kind of cast a net before they even get in the building?
Right. So I think you're talking about like security, like not vestibules, but like pass-throughs and metal detectors.
Is there anything that you can do? Because I don't even know what do they come in plastic? How do,
They do have metal components to them.
They do have metal components?
Some, yeah. I imagine there's some probably all plastic one that's out there. I mean, it gets changed every day, but for the most part, they all have some sort of mechanism that has metal in it. I mean, that's typically how they find them when they have to use a wand.
Okay, how do you guys normally catch them? Is it in the act, in the bathrooms? How do you see them walking down the hall? How do you guys catch them now?
Lots of bathroom investigations. Lots of bathroom investigations. A lot of bathroom investigation. I can't be more clear, like a lot of it. But also in the hallway, they smell it, they investigate. Administrators, find someone around the corner of a building because they smell something. It's trying to be proactive. They close down restrooms in one floor and then they open them up in other areas that can consolidate where kids are trafficking through, kind of like what cops do for speeding and things like that. They consolidate in one area and they know where you're going to be, and it's essentially trying to catch them. That way. I know vape detectors were attempted at one point, but they weren't very effective because they were just getting people to run all over the campus because they were going off all over the place. You already know what's happening, so you're trying to get there in time. I know that some principals have manned people out in front of restrooms and have teachers doing like hallway duty and all those things. Those are impactful as well. It's just still like to Dr. Micah's many points before, to the community, my points to the community as well. It's not just a school issue, it's a community issue. This is something that has to be addressed, holistically. I've talked to reporters about this. They said it's not just it coming into the school, but where is it coming from? Okay, well, it's coming from some of the shops, but the ones we're catching aren't the ones they sell in the shops, unless they're selling the ones illegally under the counter, because there's like 80% THC. These are ones that are coming from out of state. So how do they get here? Well, they come through the mail, or they get driven across state lines. So,
or they're sold on Instagram.
Right, and I can have them mailed to my
Correct.
house. Yeah. Unofficially, I've talked to some people in the post office. Like, they don't stop small packages; they stop pallets. They don't stop small packages. So, I can conceivably get a backpack full of 20, 30 of them and show up with them. It's easy. It's that's the whole thing. Like the shops and I'm sorry, it's a whole tangent here, but the vapes are a considerable issue. And I think it's a larger issue than just us chasing them down the hallways. This is symptomatic of a larger issue. So the administrators are working hard. They do what they can to catch them, and they try to investigate every lead. And they try to help kids understand the consequences and make sure that they don't have, repeat behavior. But at the end of the day, there's a whole other, 16 hours that they're not in school with us, that they're exposed to the community.
Well, if that's the case, if this is rampant and we're having a very difficult time, it seems like making the consequences as stringent as possible, just from the, if you do this, this is going to happen, rather than a gradual increase of consequences. It just seems like just slam the door shut, essentially. Because they are causing problems. These things are a problem. It's my understanding that some of these things are so toxic that they're actually killing kids. I don't know, maybe that's just a rumor or whatever, but I've heard some, horror stories.
I've seen some anecdotal data on that, and really what it comes down to is like you really don't know what's inside of them because there's no regulatory agency out there that's policing it or measuring what's inside of it. And to your point, the consequences, we can go like and continue with the mandatory piece, but we also need to think about giving parents an opportunity to intervene. When because their kid gets popped, and sometimes the parents, this is the first time they've been made aware of it, and now the kid's going to DAP for it. So it's trying to find a balance between all that, because what we found in research is that if you you give the harshest consequence for the lowest level offenses, you have a higher rate of recidivism for those individuals. Like they're more likely to offend again than if they were given a reasonable consequence for the offense. And so we're not trying to create more issues down the road. We want to try to strike a balance with it.
Well, I get that, but I would like to know how we can, prevent it. I know that's a big one. It's a big ask, and I know, how do we catch it? Because my fear is that, one of these kids is going to get a hold of one on Instagram that's loaded with fentanyl or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, we've got a child that's passed in the bathroom, and that just scares me. That's very few things scare me, but that idea scares me. So, what do we need to, do drug dogs, more often? What do we need to do to stop this or help to slow it down or just be kind of a deterrent?
Yeah. Ms. V, this is what Mr. Shoesmith was saying earlier. This is where we need the community's help. They're not getting them from the school. We're not issuing them. It really becomes that piece of, understand what's out there, help educate your child, work along with us to help us, because we know they're out there. You talk to kids today, and they will tell you they know they're everywhere. But they're not coming from us, and that's where we need our community's help in wrestling this. And as Mr. Shoesmith said, there's no regulatory piece over this, right? The laws are still trying to catch up to this, and unfortunately, sometimes the law moves very slow. And in this case, they tried something, they're walking it back a little bit. I think we're going to continue to see. We heard from our own city council that they couldn't do anything, then they passed a resolution to do some things. So I think everybody's trying to figure out the best way forward in this. But ultimately, we need our parents' help on this one. Like, we can catch them, but, check your kid's phone. Look at what they're messaging. Check, go into their rooms and check it. Look in their backpacks. Smell those things, because they don't smell like your traditional. They smell fruity and different things because they're masking it all, right? Like, help us intervene with young people, because you're right. 95% THC in some of these things is astronomically crazy, and you can see the very they make them very sick, and they have horrible reactions to them because you're not meant to do that.
Right.
Miss Landry, you had a comment. You had your mic on.
Yeah, I do have a question. Can we go back one slide, please? So I know you said that these numbers are individuals in each category. Do any of them cross over? So I had THC one day and then I had non-THC the other day. Are these exact individuals for both categories?
So it's a good question, because there's a lot of different ways to look at this, because we have we have offenses where, let's say, assault bodily injury, like one student assaulted another kid, and we subsequently find a vape on them too. So what we try to do is identify, like, what is the primary offense, and these were the primary offenses. So that kid was found in possession of a non-THC vape or found in possession of a THC vape, and that was their primary offense. And then when we look at that, these are unique individuals, so it's only by incident. So this isn't a count of incidences. So these incidences are not the same, but they could be, if he had a THC one, that would be the only count that we have for that individual, for that incident. But tomorrow, a new incident gets caught with a non-THC vape. That's one count too. I mean, we can count them 15 different ways because it's, you know, it's just,
so
it becomes difficult,
it can
but
be
I
the same
want to give
kid.
you a plain way to look at
Sounds
it
like
so
the
you have a
answer.
reasonable understanding. They had one nicotine vape in one incident, so we have a count of that.
And so looking at these numbers, we could say if they were individuals, it would be about 5% of our student body that is participating in this.
Yeah, I have to run the number, but if that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe you've seen this chart before. This is what we've had for our disciplinary consequences when House Bill 114 was rolled out. What we're proposing, should you choose to approve, which is the first line, which is incident number 1. We're looking at ISS for 10 days. I put in parentheses on the right-hand side of each of those numbers what the previous placement at DAP was. So previously, if we're looking at secondary on the left-hand side, first incident, ISS, 10 days, ISS, but previously it was 15 days at DAP, and the early review was at 10 days. So typically, kids would spend 10 days at DAP and then be returned back to their home campus. That would be replaced with the 10 days ISS instead.
And Mr. Shoesmith, again, I just think it's important to note that these are for e-cigarettes.
That's correct.
Not necessarily THC. THC, it's always to DAP.
Right.
This is just the e-cigarettes, possession of, or nicotine.
And so the next item here, this is the second decision point for y'all, which is the parental involvement in disciplinary placements. So this is lengthy, so I'll give you the brief overview of it. Essentially, this is allowing us, a parent, if a child's being placed in a DAP or expelled, the parent can request a behavioral agreement. And what that means is that the parent would then agree to, and parent and student would agree to certain things that would, if the student completed it, then the student would be eligible to be released early from their placement term. And the principal in this behavioral agreement has sole discretion whether or not they want to allow it. And it is not a guarantee, but they do have to offer or tell the parent that it is available. So I have to make them aware that, hey, the behavioral agreement's in place should you want to request it. You request it, I can still say no, because the egregious nature of the offense, or because this is your 4th time doing it, I'm not allowing you to have an early review or behavioral agreement. Essentially, though, this is something our district has already had in place. So we've already had, like you saw in the HB 114 e-cig chart, we had an early review process in place. And so I just kind of outlined a couple things here. What DAP does, NEISD does, is they look at good days. And so when we offer to a family, when they come through our office, we say, you have a 40-day placement at, it's early review at 30 days. And what that does is it incentivizes students to do well, act right at alternative, and get their work done. If everything works out and they have enough good days, by the time they get to the minimum term of their placement, which is the early review point, which is 30 days in this instance, then they can be released back to their home campus. And at DAP, we do the early review with Mr. Diaz in our office receives information from JJA, letting us know about their behavior, and if everything works out, then the child will be released at their early review time. It's very similar to with this behavior agreement. We just don't have a codified manner in which we were doing it that is a formal agreement between the parent and us. It is an agreement between the Alternative Center and JJA and the parent at this point. And so the statement we have here at the end is in the Student Code of Conduct. I did highlight that. I think when you have a copy of the Student Code of Conduct, I put little annotations in there. I apologize, I don't have a change document. Typically we have like here's what the old one was, here's the new one. We decided this last year because there were so many significant changes. We've been wanting to do this for a little bit, and we were finally at a good place to do it, which is moving to the TASB's Model Student Code of Conduct. We have our language in there from our previous Code of Conduct, but it's in their format, and that allows us to keep in a very similar style to what they produce every year. It also comes translated in Spanish already, so that's even helpful. But so we only have to have certain parts of it translated, but it has everything that we have in it. Our prior one, it just looks a little bit different. So I could just highlight the whole document red and say we changed the whole thing. I didn't want to do that, so that's why I try to annotate some spots where the House Bill 6 and other bills had some impact. But essentially, you know, our recommendation would be that we're asking that we agree to the parent involvement for disciplinary placements. And I'll go to the next slide here because that's our asks of you. But essentially, we feel we already do this process, the early review. This would just codify it. You know, I essentially don't think that, you know, after talking to our folks at Alternative Elementary and Alternative Middle and High, like this is something that they're kind of excited about because it's more of a formalized agreement with the parent, and they may be able to be more prescriptive about some of the things that they're wanting to have the kiddo participate in, and to their wellness and betterment. So our recommendations, the use of possession for e-cigarettes, the first e-cigarette offense would be assigned to ISS for 10 days. After talking with principals, they have told us this is preferred. It's easier to get the students' work. It keeps them on track faster, less transition for the kiddo. But we did still keep level 2 and level 3 as not discretionary placements for us, but we're mandating that those kiddos would go because those are repeat offenders. And then our second one is to allow parents the right to request a behavior agreement, knowing that principals have the 100% right to refuse the agreement and not agree to it, essentially. But I do think it gives them the opportunity to have the conversation with the parent about, here's some other things I'd like to see your kiddo do while they're here to improve where their standing is in their school to hopefully move them forward and not have to come back. With that, I would seek your recommendation for approval.
When students are in ISS, are they allowed to do their UIL activities, their sports and so forth?
I think that's, I'll have to check. But it's not the DAP placement?
They're not.
They're not?
No. During the time that they are assigned that ISS, if they finish at the end of the school day, then they're allowed to because they finished that one day. Their last day, whatever that is, whether it's one day.
So if they're 10 days.
Right.
They're 10 days out of.
Correct. And on
football.
the 10th day, they've completed it at the end of the school, and then they would be able to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoesmith. Questions? Ms. Shelton?
Are we going through the student code of conduct now?
That is the agenda item, yes, that's what we.
Okay, I just want to make sure before I
Yeah,
start going through my pages.
That's the only.
Okay.
That's all we got left.
On page 35, can we change the verbiage to say engage in any behavior that violates the student code of conduct and is motivated by any hate, including anti-Semitism?
Okay, so I'm sorry, can you tell me the page on the student code of
I'm sorry,
conduct?
35, this one.
On the bottom right there, page 6, okay.
Oh, okay, I'll go by those.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the.
No, you're good.
All right. Engages in any behavior that violates the student code of conduct is motivated by anti-Semitism. Sorry, I've been talking all day. And you're asking to change it to?
Is motivated by any hate, any form of hate, including anti-Semitism.
Okay.
Mr. Lopez?
I can take a look at that.
From the legal's perspective, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Lopez, but as long as we have the anti-Semitism piece in there, we can always add more to it.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why, if the board wishes to do that, they can do that. It can be any hate to include anti-Semitism. The purpose of the legal requirement, as Mr. Shoesmith pointed out, is it's specific to anti-Semitism, but it can certainly be added to if that's the board's desire.
Does that then have to be defined somewhere? Or is there a definition of that would be able to back that up?
Which part? The anti-Semitism?
Just using the word any kind of hate. I mean, I guess there's an implied
There is, and it does, just from a sort of a legal perspective and understanding that if we're in student disciplinary proceedings and we're talking about hate, we would need to come up with some sort of definition, just because I know lawyers on the other side that are representing students are going to want to make as much of that as possible, to say, well, that's ambiguous, you're accusing my client of hate, but it really didn't have anything to do with that. It just becomes nebulous. So,
and I don't necessarily disagree with the inclusion. I just want to make sure that if we're going to say that we've got something to give it a little teeth.
Well, the way that it could be worded a little bit better, if that's the issue, is anti-Semitism or any other form of discrimination prohibited by law. Something to that effect.
That's beautiful.
So that you are basically mirroring the categories that are already recognized by federal and state law.
And that's
and
what I was
only
looking for.
those.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think we want to come up with what that definition is, but if we can tie it back to something that exists, then that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue, Ms. Shelton.
Okay, thank you. Page 11. So this is more for Mr. Jarrett and Mr. Jimenez and Dr. Micah.
And that'd be 40 in our packet.
40 in our packet.
Page 11 in the student code of conduct.
Right. Well, maybe not, because you're going to ask us to vote on first offense is ISS, second offense is in our DAP, right?
I'm asking for the first offense, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because we have to have one or the other, 10 days ISS or.
Okay. Because my point was going to be, I want to make sure we're consistent, similar to the other conversation we were having, that we are measuring discipline consistently so that we don't set ourselves up for a grievance, but we'll vote on one or the other.
Well, right now, let me just clarify, the recommendation is what was presented to us, which is 10 days ISS for the first offense.
Okay.
That is the recommendation
Yes,
from
sir.
staff, and that is.
What becomes in the motion?
Correct.
Okay. Number on page 14, 43 in our packet, there is nothing under parental involvement. It says that you have to notify the parents, but it does not speak to the timing. And I know we've had that issue this past year where parents weren't notified in what they thought was an appropriate amount of time. So I would love for us to say, is it 8 hours? Is it, what's the timing that if their kid is placed, that they're going to be notified? And then on the second paragraph, again, I just want to make sure we're going to be consistent with the way that we give out the discipline. Do we have, Mr. Shoesmith, do we have a timing that exists of how soon we notify the parents?
So there is in that second paragraph, is 5 o'clock by the next business day.
Did I miss that? Hold
Yes,
on.
ma'am. And that's in chapter 37.
Okay, I don't see that. I'm sorry. The agreement, redux, decision to revoke.
So you're looking
Help
at
me, because I don't see it.
page 14.
I don't have
Here.
It's actually on page 13.
Yeah, on your 13, Mike.
Yep, page 42. It states, "A good faith effort shall be made to provide written notice of disciplinary action to the student on the day the action was taken for delivery to the student's parents. If the
Okay.
parent has not been reached by telephone or in person by 5 p.m. of the first business day after the day, the CBC shall send notification by U.S. mail."
Okay, thank you. And so this may be the same for page 16, page 45, because I was asking about timing. I did not read the things that were not in red or blue, so that may be in red or it may be in black, and I missed it.
What are you asking?
The highlighted a teacher, CBC administrator. I'm assuming about the under formal teacher removal. Is that subject to the same timing that is noted on page 13/42?
This one right below it says 3 days.
Right. So they'll hold a conference they'll notify the parent
Well,
upon the removal.
the 3 days is when you're going to have the conference.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is you're removing this kid. How soon are you going to tell the parents?
That
And that's
still
why I'm
applies to
asking.
the prior for
It-
disciplinary action.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just want to confirm. And then on page 17/46, in the blue section, no later than the third day of class, the student will remove a conference with the teacher. Oh, that goes back to the other. Okay, so that's handled there. Thank you. I think you covered that on page 65. Okay. The only other thing that I did not see in here, and again, I did not read the black, I just read what I thought were the changes. We talked on Monday about making sure that there was a process in place, and I'm going to lose my train of thought. Let me find it, and I'll come back. So I don't see it in here about having a way that we communicate back out to our parents. Give me 1 second.
Is that regarding the discipline process, about how we?
No, in our meeting on Monday, what was our topic? It's late, and it's my birthday, and I haven't had no cake.
Ms. Shelton, first off, happy birthday. Secondly, was this about the Chromebooks and the process for a kiddo to get a Chromebook?
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you. So now I've got my train of thought back. We talked about making sure that the Chromebooks could travel with the students to the alternative school because we had a 1-for-1. This is a student handbook, is this the place where that would go?
This is a student code of conduct. It wouldn't go in there. It would go in the
Okay.
handbook.
Got it.
Possible.
Where will we put that? Where will we put that policy?
So, two things. One, we're working on the process for that piece, but we want some redundancy to ensure the kiddos at alternative campus, even if they forget a device, we will have extra devices there for them as well. So that will become part of our process for any time there's a placement for a kiddo at alternative. So we're working on that since the Monday meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cox?
I have a question. It's on page 38. And so this is dealing with artificial intelligence. And I understand how that applies academically. My concern is, I'm not sure this is a sensitive topic, but this may be the new sexting. You know, is that what deep fake means? Whereas, you know, someone's head can be put on somebody else's body
Right.
and sent.
So my reference to deepfakes and things like that?
Sure, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's what it references. And so
Okay.
essentially with all the different software, you can do anything to any image or create an image and make likenesses and things. That is a whole other category of offense that's covered under Chapter 37 and also the Texas Penal Code that isn't necessarily directly related to that AI. That's more like academic issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is, if a student participates in that, then.
Oh, there are significant offenses that go along with
Okay,
it. Yes,
all
ma'am.
right. Okay, thank you very much.
Everything from cyberbullying to.
Sure, yes, of course. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the 2025-26 Student Code of Conduct as presented with the inclusion of language provided by Mr. Lopez on page 6 of the Student Code of Conduct?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Chigi. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Shoesmith.
Thank you.
Item 7, adjournment, and the time is 8:31 PM.